In the hall, decorated around the perimeter with luxurious gold decorative elements, two young men were sitting on either side of the table, drinking tea. Getting straight to the point, the guy blurted out that his companion would never be able to replace Titi. This guy, Wilhelm Hunt, was the fiancé of the main character and was supposed to set foot in her family. It would seem that the engagement went smoothly, but it was not to be. The girl did not quite understand what Wilhelm was trying to say. If the guy had brought this to the attention of the bride before the engagement, it would have been much easier to break up. Being sure that he would be able to give his bride everything she wanted, Wilhelm was not going to leave. However, it was important for him that the girl knew that his heart belonged to someone else. The princess was shocked by this information and did not understand how he could stoop so low. Not only did Lord William allow himself to be rude, being a model of a knight, but also proudly declared that he wanted to become Tati's lover. The girl was even more shocked when she learned that Wilhelm did not mind if his wife also got a lover, and Tatia had no idea about anything and was the guy's unrequited love. This was a particularly reckless act on William's part. In fact, everything that happened was a game world called Her Men. The events unfolded in the academy in a fantasy universe. The task of the game is to make choices and increase interest. It is a regular dating simulator with several characters and different endings. The problem is that Karina Pioneer, whom the girl has moved into, is a secondary character. The description said that she was much more beautiful and richer than Tati, but the reality was not like that. Thanks to the settings, the main character became beautiful as a fairy, and everyone fell in love with her, and Karina remained a puppet, against which Titi looked even better. Until the original game ended, it was tolerable. Karina just lived quietly, despite the fact that the relationship remained the main problem. Daniel, the son of Duke Malfurion, was the first boyfriend they wanted to marry when the children were still in the womb. He was a handsome, kind young man with good manners and claimed to be the main character of the game. However, when the couple grew up, Daniel could not marry the girl, choosing Tatia as his bride. Tatia was Karina's friend and hoped that this would not affect their friendship in any way. She chose the main character and the game ended. Karina assumed that she would no longer be mentioned in the original, but the next candidate to win her heart was the owner of the Magic Tower, Raymond Carcel. The handsome man was one of the contenders for the main characters, and Karina thought that if Tatia chose Daniel, then she could be with this guy. But soon, Raymond also chose the heroine's girlfriend. After that, the girl began to communicate only with secondary characters and soon fell in love with the eldest son of one of the ordinary viscounts. All this time, Karina could not settle in this world in any way, and it became the only one who made her happy. Days, weeks, months passed, and the princess's next boyfriend went to Tatia's again. In this world, even a high status, beautiful appearance and skills could not be compared with the title of the main character. Karina had already begun to think that her friend would deliberately seduce her boyfriends, but it turned out that this man was from an ordinary family. Andrew Lovrun Gloucester was the half-brother of the current emperor, and the only member of the royal family who went missing. Naturally, the main character will always be next to a member of the imperial family. Almost immediately after the breakup, Karina heard the news about the wedding of Tatia and Andrew. The game was completed 3 years ago. Tatia got married, and it seemed that now the girl would not be mentioned for sure and everything would be fine, but Karina stepped on the same rake again. She stepped closer to Daniel and poured a cup of tea on his head with confidence. The girl was no longer going to tolerate such an attitude and promised that he would have to pay for all his words. The next day, a solemn event was held in the kingdom, attended by a large number of guests of different classes. Karina also attended the celebration, but annoyed by the conversation with the groom, she could not fully enjoy the atmosphere. She was stabbed in the back again. Everyone around was gossiping about the girl and her failed marriage, and considered Karina to be obsessed with men. She also did not want to come here, but there was no other choice, since her father had gone abroad, and the presence of a pioneer representative was mandatory. Suddenly, a ringing female voice was heard behind Karina's back. Tatia was calling for a girl. She had heard from Lord William that they had been married, and she had joked inappropriately that she would not take her friend's fiancé away. High society, obsessed with discussing the lives of other people, believed that Karina and the Archduke were completely different, like light and shadow, and unlike the girl, the guy was just an angel. Tatiana always behaved like this, pretending to be innocent and making a mockery of her friend, thereby making her an unhappy bridesmaid. Karina notified the girl that Wilhelm did not care about her marriage, and it would be a great honor for him to become Tati's lover. Tatia said that during a meeting with Wilhelm, they joked that there would be rumors about their romantic relationship, and the guy said that he didn't care about gossip. Karina was impressed and suggested to the girl that she could also meet her husband alone. After all, they are best friends. The Duchess of Gloucester held out her hand to tell her that she had misunderstood, but Karina pulled her back, beating her palm away with her palm. The servant called the representative of the pioneer to go to the emperor, and this was more than ever, because the girl almost exploded with indignation. The servants introduced the Archduke Pioneer to the emperor and announced that Princess Karina had arrived in his place. The girl greeted His Majesty and, raising her head, saw the young man for the first time. This guy is a lord of iron and blood who committed a brutal murder of rebels and their families, a tyrant who has not a drop of humanity in him. The man looked more harmless than the girl thought. Besides, he was unrealistically handsome and was Tatia's first love in the game, clearly worth it. Karina stood silent for a while, and after the emperor's question about what the girl was thinking about, she said that she was surprised by his extraordinary beauty. She was not afraid of a man at all, despite the fact that those who had heard about him were shaking with fear. The girl had gone through such a thing, so she understood that getting to know a person on her own was much more important than drawing conclusions about him from conversations. If rumors are to be believed, Karina is a preoccupied woman obsessed with men. The emperor enjoyed talking to the girl very much, and he told her about it directly. They chatted over a cup of tea all evening, and the guy was well impressed by the conversation. Finally, he decided to ask Karina a question. If the seat next to her is still free, would she like to become his girlfriend? Karina was impressed by such an unexpected proposal and replied that the emperor would still find his passion much better than her. The girl planned to return home immediately after the audience, but the man asked her not to run away, as there would be an important announcement before the end of the banquet. Karina returned to the celebration and, unfortunately for herself, was discovered by Lord Wilhelm. He spoke to the bride as if nothing had happened. The girl reminded him that their relationship was destroyed through his fault, so she was not obliged to report what she had talked about with the emperor, much less communicate about anything with her fiancé. Karina publicly announced that she demanded a divorce after he confessed to her that he wanted to become the lover of the Archduchess of Gloucester, which caused increased public interest. The guy was angry that the bride decided to disgrace him in public, and with all his strength he swung at the girl. Karina closed her eyes, preparing for the blow, and was already planning how she would blame her fiancé for all the troubles and destroy the family of the Marquise of Haunt. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Andrew appeared, intercepting the attacker's hand. If Wilhelm had hit Karina once, she would have deprived him of all funds, and then she would have disgraced him to the entire high society so that he would be ashamed to appear in public and, in the end, would have destroyed the reputation of his entire family. But for some reason, Andrew intervened in the conflict. The girl thanked the Archduke, and without developing the dialogue further, hurried away. With quick sips, she emptied her glass of wine, thinking about what had happened and the insignificance of her fiancé. Karina did not understand where she had crossed Tati's path. She did not care about Wilhelm at all, but if the girl started dating someone else, her friend would definitely get in. The princess was wondering if there was a man in the world who would not like Tatia, when out of the corner of her eye she noticed the reflection of the emperor in the glass. Their eyes met, and Karina blushed. The man asked her to wait, not get drunk, but it seems that something went wrong. The girl thought that the emperor had finally come to make an announcement, but in fact there was no announcement. If the guy had not deceived Karina, she would have left immediately. His Majesty asked the princess how he could make up for the wait, and Karina began to refuse when she suddenly saw Tatia watching them closely. The girl guessed that her friend was roaring, because she was next to her first love and asked the emperor to snuggle up to her. The guy was well aware of what was happening, so he did not refuse Karina. Tatia left, and the girl thanked the emperor for playing along with her. Karina suddenly thought that he could be different from other men. The girl noted that he is very handsome, especially when he smiles. She told the guy that perhaps they should really start a relationship, but immediately pulled herself back. The emperor could think that the girl was crazy since she herself refused him, and now she offers to date. However, the guy, on the contrary, was glad that the princess changed her mind. If they start building a relationship, someday he will be able to marry her, and then he will try to become the best man for her. Karina woke up in her bed, remembering the night before and assuming it was all just a dream. After seeing the countless gifts given by the emperor, the girl finally realized that what had happened was real. Also, the emperor handed over a letter of invitation to the palace, which said that he hoped that the girl's opinion would not change overnight. Karina was frightened. If she said that she had changed her mind, the emperor might be angry, and rumors would spread around her again, this time on a larger scale. And most importantly, Archduchess Tatia will laugh at her, because she is the main character, not the princess. Karina was distracted from her thoughts by the servants showing the gifts of the emperor, a Florian linen that the Archduchess of Gloucester could not get, perfume that only members of the imperial family could buy, and other things that the princess eventually liked. Most of all, Lily, Karina's personal servant, was happy for the princess. It was noticeable that His Majesty liked the girl very much. Opening the doors, the girl's father appeared on the threshold of the Pioneer Palace. The man returned very suddenly. In an orderly tone, he instructed his daughter to urgently go to his office. The seal on the things belonged to the imperial family, and Archduke Pioneer shamed Karina for being an unfree lady and receiving gifts from the emperor. The girl told her father that she was going to divorce Haunt, and the Archduke was even more furious. Thinking that his daughter would not make such a decision without good reason, and perhaps it was Archduchess Tatia, the father slowed down a little. Unfortunately, it was not for long, as the girl revealed that Lord William was going to become the lover of the Archduchess, and the man flared up again, slamming his hand on the table with frantic force. He admitted that it was probably his fault and promised that Marquis Haunt would give the girl a gift from head to toe, so if she wanted something as compensation, then let her speak. Karina wished for Wilhelm Island. Now the territory was abandoned, but using salt from these islands, the family could open a perfume factory. Before relocating, the girl really liked this game. She saw the endings of all the main characters, and most of all, she liked the ending with Wilhelm. The island of Sabin, which belonged to him, was located in a place where no man had set foot, and absolutely any aroma could be made from the salts of the sea washing the island, and they could also be used as bath products. The heroes released bath fragrances for sale. This was their main product, which was called Tatia's fragrance, and as a result, Wilhelm gained wealth and authority. Of course, now the process of its development has stopped since Tatia chose another one. Haunt had the prospect of growth, so now it was necessary to cut off all opportunities from the very beginning, because it would be very problematic for Wilhelm to build a successful business on the seized lands. The Pioneer family had a lot of money, so the father had no problem allowing his daughter to do whatever she wanted, including he did not mind if the girl liked the emperor. Karina showed Lily what her father had given her to cheer her up. It was the same blank check in which you could write any meaning. Since the girl had no more friends, she offered the maid to go to the boutique with her to pick up clothes for the meeting with the emperor. Lily was very happy with the offer and agreed to help Karina with the choice. Karina was strained by the condemning looks of people, and also she was afraid to meet her ex, so all this time she did not go anywhere, but now people did not bother her. On the street, the girl's path was blocked by a man. The guy was Karina's second ex-boyfriend, Raymond Carcel. The girl asked him to move from the aisle and not interfere, but as it turned out, Raymond also decided to visit this place. Karina did not imagine that he had a passion for luxury women's clothing boutiques. Being a devoted fan of Tatia, he came for a gift for the girl and sarcastically stated that clothes from this place did not fit Karina. Lily intervened in the conversation. She was outraged that the young man was talking to the princess like that, but Karina managed to convince the maid that he was not worthy of their attention. In the boutique, the girls were greeted by the manager Fieri. Every eminent boutique on this street received a message from His Majesty. He asked to choose something special for the princess. The emperor ordered to take a look at Karina's previous purchases from this boutique and choose a gift based on her preferences. Of course, the girl was very happy with such an attitude of the man, but she believed that it was too much. The princess said those words in a drunken state, and he cared so much about her that Karina even felt ashamed. Inspired, Lily fluttered around the girl in search of the most suitable outfit, and in the end made her choice. Enthusiastically convincing Karina that the emperor fell in love, Lily stopped in the middle of a sentence. But not only Lily stopped, Everything around froze. Raymond appeared in the room, the only one who had used temporal magic so openly. Being in a relationship with Karina for only 6 months, Raymond dared to think that he knew the girl better than she herself, to which she replied that the guy was a pathetic loser who ran after a married woman, giving Tatia all the money of the Magic Tower. Raymond got angry and, using his magical abilities, made the girl freeze, after which he ordered her to beg forgiveness on her knees. Karina flew into a rage. If the guy had splashed out a little more magic, other wizards would have immediately arrested him, which the girl perfectly made clear to her former lover. The guy noted that Karina had changed a lot and dissolved in space. Time continued to run its course again, and the girl went to try on the outfits. After lunch, a carriage came from the palace for Karina. After overcoming the path, the girl got out of the carriage and was surprised. In front of her was not the emperor's personal palace at all, since the man wanted to hold a meeting in a significant place. The place was the Winter Palace, where Astaire lived during his time as a prince. The grounds were private, so the only woman who had ever been here was the empress. The emperor treated Karina too well. It was a disaster. The girl could not tell him that she had made a mistake while drunk. The guy met her on the street, and from surprise, Karina pressed her back against the column. The emperor held out his hand to her, and the girl held out her hand in return. Astaire was a little confused as this was his first date. Astaire did not know about Karina's preferences, so he set the table with different sweets. The girl was not delighted with sweets, but wanted to try everything. The emperor poured his favorite bitter tea into mugs, neutralizing the sweetness, reminding the girl of the incident with the alcoholic beverage. He understood that Karina was worried about the reputation of the family and the like, but hoped that she did not change her mind about their relationship. In this world where everything is decided by the main character, Astaire turned out to be the biggest victim. Due to the fact that Tatiana was loved by everyone and got married, the imperial power was completely focused on him. Astaire was an emperor but had no influence, so in order to retain the title, he decided to destroy all rebellious aristocrats. After that, he was popularly nicknamed the Emperor Sitting on the Bloody Throne. He is a very well-known personality throughout the state, and marrying the daughter of the Archduke Pioneer will help protect his image. Despite the fact that Karina was drunk and made a mistake, the Emperor was still kind to her. The girl did not understand what she really wanted. Astaire said that he really wanted to be with her. If Karina took his side, then Archduke Pioneer could become his ally, and the guy himself would help the girl take revenge on Tati, so the offer was really good. The Emperor knew what was going on between the friends. He thought that Karina was too kind because she maintained her friendship with the Archduchess even after what she did. But that day, her eyes were filled with a desire for revenge, and the guy noticed it. The girl did not want to cause trouble for Astaire, but he swore by the title of Emperor that he would always be by her side spiritually and politically, and wanted her to use his help. In this case, Karina promised that she would do everything possible to become his girlfriend. Before going to bed, during a conversation with Lily, the princess noted that she and the emperor had a lot in common, and the maid fully approved of the girl's choice. At that moment, Lily was cleaning the room and found a bracelet that Karina had had since she was 10 years old. The girl glanced at the jewelry and remembered her first dark story. The main character of her dark story was Daniel, who exchanged the girl for Titi. He was her fiancé from infancy and once gave the girls identical bracelets under the pretext of friendship. Even as a child, Karina thought that Daniel liked Tatia. At that time, the original was still ongoing, and she was very unhappy about it. The bracelet in the girl's hands sparkled in some strange way, but she decided that it was her imagination. Lily assumed that the bracelet was cursed and asked the princess to give it to her to burn. Karina decided to leave the jewelry just in case and put it on the bedside table. Marquis Haunt was very angry with his son. Crumpling up a sheet of paper, he resolutely headed in his direction. Despite Wilhelm's excuses, his father knew that the Archduchess was his son's first love. The guy again tried to prove to the man that there was a misunderstanding between him and his fiancée, as his father slapped Wilhelm in the face. A feud with the Pioneer family would have caused the Hunts a lot of problems, so after ordering Wilhelm to apologize to the girl, the father threw his son out the door. The guy was in a rather strange relationship with Tatia for a long time, more than friends but less than lovers. Of course, it was unrequited love, and if he had let it go, it would have been over. Therefore, after Tatia got married, Wilhelm tried to forget everything. Parents introduced the young people to each other, and Wilhelm married for the sake of family and success. However, the wedding took place, and they never met. And after the engagement, Tatia contacted the guy. They met after a long time, and the girl was still beautiful. Tatia said that if Wilhelm got married, they would be able to see each other much more often, because both would be married and no one would have any questions. Wilhelm thought that Titi wanted him to become her lover, but as soon as his relationship with Karina deteriorated, the girl stopped communicating with Hunt. By all means, the guy decided that he should not allow a divorce. Karina and Lily listened to various cents because the princess really wanted to open her own business. She was no longer going to trust men and get married. Instead, she decided to distract herself and focus on work. The girl was grateful to the emperor for wanting to take her side, but she could not yet rely on him. People around were discussing Karina again. The girl allegedly ran after the emperor, or even dated two at the same time, so they thought. Lily asked the princess not to pay attention. The girls around were only envious. Each time, Karina pretended not to know anything and ignored them. After thinking for a while, the princess quickly headed towards the girls. She made it clear to them that she heard every word and told them how it really was, so that the girls could spread the right rumors. The friends apologized and, embarrassed, hurried away. Karina suggested that the maid go to the Nivea store. It had been becoming popular lately, and in fact, the place would be good for the princess's business. Tatia and Daniel approached the girl. The Archduchess did not expect to see an old friend in such a place. There was silence in the air. Embarrassed, Daniel asked the princess to say hello in return. Karina told the maid to wait a little longer and not let anyone into the room. Lily prepared a tray. If the Duke of Malfurion or the Duchess of Gloucester began to press the girl, the maid would be ready. Tatia asked her friend if the rumors that the girl had reached the emperor were true, but Karina only laughed that she was asking about Astor. The princess said that Titi only feels strange because she can't take a man away from her friend. The Archduchess tried to justify herself by saying that she was only worried about the fact that her friend misunderstood her and Will, but the girl was adamant. She believed that if a married woman appeared with another man, everyone would consider her a prostitute. Karina turned her attention to Daniel Malfurion. Due to the fact that he and Tatia had been friends since childhood, the guy continued to run around her like a dog even after her wedding. The first person who betrayed the princess and left a wound on his heart. The girl asked Tatia not to interfere in her relationship with Astor anymore and apologized for calling him by name, explaining that she called him that way in private and it became a habit, although it was not true. In the end, since such a conversation happened, Karina decided to speak out. The girl did not consider these people her friends because they did nothing when there were dirty rumors about her. Despite Karina's deep resentments, Tatia decided that they were friends after all and offered to reconcile. Friends. This word caused a storm of emotions in the princess, and she pushed Titi's outstretched hand with decisive force, not intentionally tearing the girl's bracelet. The Archduchess immediately rushed in a panic to pick up the disintegrated beads from the floor. Daniel promised that he would buy the girl a new bracelet, but this option did not suit her at all. Tatia needed only this one. Saying that it was too much, Tatia ran hysterically out of the room. When Daniel followed the girl out, Lily entered the room with a tray in her hands, burning with anger. The maid was eavesdropping on the entire conversation, barely restraining herself from hitting the guests' dishes with the dishes. Everything that happened between these two was a complete shame. Karina was glad that she did not marry Daniel after all. A strange sound caught the girl's attention. On the floor, she noticed, and picked up a bead that had fallen from Titi's torn bracelet. While the item was in Karina's hands, the level of sympathy hung over Daniel's head with a value of 64% and only grew over time. Exactly the same interface was in the original game. Tatia immediately approached the girl and grabbed her by the arm. Lily was still holding the tray at the ready, but Karina asked them to leave them and not let anyone in. Titi tried to snatch the bead from the princess's hands, but she just mocked her, removing her palm to the side. It was Karina's turn to take the girl's things. In fact, she was not going to take anything away, so in the end, she returned the thing to the mistress. She did not need someone else's, unlike Tatia. The Archduchess was worried that her friend had seen everything and asked the girl about it. The princess pretended not to understand what Titi was talking about, but in the end, she showed her cards. She was interested in how the girl seduced her exes with the bracelet. Each of her engagements was disrupted through the fault of Tatia, and for the girl, it was just a game. All this time, she had acted so meanly, and now she dared to be jealous of Astaire. However, the Archduchess also claimed that the Emperor was special, and so were her feelings for him. In the doorway, Karina noticed Daniel. It seemed that he was eavesdropping, and this was a great reason for a provocation. The princess told Titi that all her men would marry someday, become the husbands of other women and forget about her, but the girl did not think so. In a raised voice, she stated that all these guys were her from the very beginning, and she would not allow anyone to take them. Of course, Daniel heard all this. Disappointed by the words of his beloved, he could only pronounce her name and nothing more. A tear rolled down the boy's face, and without waiting for Titi, he walked out of the room. Today the girl had to return home alone. Karina assured the Archduchess that in time, everyone else would see her true face. But despite the fact that the girl was defeated today, she still claimed that she was special, unlike the princess. The pioneer invited the girl to smile, as she usually did, because she did not have long to rejoice. The rivals were about to meet at the festival. Karina was not only angry with Tatia and the men who betrayed her, but also worried that the problem was with her. She imagined how Titi would be knocked out, since she was not the only one who had such a bracelet. From the outside, the jewelry looked ordinary. There was a possibility that Karina's bracelet did not have any powers. Perhaps increasing the level of sympathy is the only goal of the game, but despite all efforts, she failed to seduce Aster. The girl was writing something with a pen on a piece of paper, thinking that Titi would soon be in her shoes. Karina felt a little vulgar in her outfit, but Lily calmed her down. It was perfect to teach this terrible lady a lesson. There is no empress in the country, and the first slow dance was always danced by a couple of archdukes, so all the attention usually belonged to Tati. Karina had always avoided such events, as she did not want to see her, but now everything was different. The bracelet on the girl's hand looked a little childish, but this was a chance to find out if it had the strength in it. At the festival, Astaire was bored among high society, indulging in memories of the princess and waiting for her arrival. Duke Malfurion greeted the emperor. He looked a little upset, and Astaire thought that a man with everything written on his face should not be a politician. The man asked the Duke what kind of relationship he had with Karina, and he replied that they had been best friends since childhood, but remembering that the girl was dating the emperor, he clarified that they were still nothing more than friends. Looking at how Daniel clings to the Archduchess as a friend, Astaire wondered what this word meant to the guy. Daniel thought that it must have been very hard for Karina, and he did not worry about her all this time. The emperor asked the guy to be more careful in the future because he was not as kind as the princess. Suddenly, a ringing female voice was heard next to the guys. As it usually happened, Tatia was next to the men. While the girl was communicating with the emperor, Daniel noticed that she had fixed the bracelet and looked very insincere. Until now, it remained a mystery to the Duke what had happened that day. After what happened, every time he saw Titi, he felt sick. The girl told Astaire that by coincidence it was her birthday and was waiting for congratulations from the guy. He congratulated her, but noted that her husband apparently pays little attention to the girl. Looking at the emperor with puppy eyes, Tatia asked to take his first dance as a gift. Astaire did not have time to say a word as Andrew Gloucester appeared in the field of view of people. The guy pulled his wife away. The Archduke apologized to the emperor for his wife's awkwardness, but in fact he had nothing to apologize for. Finally, Astaire affirmatively asked Titi not to interfere with him in her promiscuous relationship anymore. Karina heard some noise. Wilhelm was running with all his might, as he really wanted to talk to the girl. The boy's path was blocked by the butler. Duke Andrew told him that if Lord William suddenly appeared, the man could safely throw him out of the door. Obviously, the guy was not right with the control of emotions. He clenched his hand into a fist and swung at the servant. Karina, worried about the butler, and also realizing that the conversation would take place someday, asked the man to move away. The girl decided to check the effect of the bracelet. As expected, the level of sympathy was close to zero. Karina was sure that their conversation had ended last time at the banquet and did not understand what else the guy wanted to achieve. The numbers on Wilhelm's scoreboard continued to decline. The girl reminded him that he had lost his mind and was ready to use violence. Barely restraining his anger, the Lord apologized to his bride and admitted that he was wrong. Since the guy sincerely repented, Karina accepted his apology but still asked him to leave. It was impossible to let the girl go in any case, so Wilhelm grabbed the princess by the hand and began to persuade her to stop the divorce proceedings. After all, this would be the fourth breakup, and perhaps no one would want to marry a woman after this. However, Karina was not inspired by his words. The girl did not even accept the guy's offer to see her off for the last time, knowing that all this was happening because Tatya found out about the divorce and did not want to see the Lord anymore. Wilhelm noticed a bracelet on Karina's hand, exactly the same one that Tatya wore, and decided that the girl wanted to be like her so that the Lord's feelings would change. The guy crossed all boundaries, and the butler threatened to call the guards if they began to insult the princess again. Wilhelm's sympathy began to increase. It seems that the Lord really believed that Karina began to imitate Tatya in order to influence him. Karina thought about the fact that she should take the bracelet with her to the banquet to see the level of sympathy of the emperor. Thanks to him, she could say anything to increase the sympathy of a man. The princess's bracelet also had power, but still the girl decided not to wear it and asked Lily to put the jewelry in the room. Entering the hall, Karina felt a strange atmosphere. Daniel was dull, and Tatya and Andrew looked as if they had quarreled a couple of minutes ago. As always, only the emperor shone with happiness, greeting the girl. "That's what it's like when someone is sincerely happy to see you." The princess asked Aster why he was so happy, and leaning closer, he whispered something in the girl's ear. The emperor greeted all those present at the festival. He hoped that the guests would be able to forget about hard work on this day and have plenty of rest. All Karina's thoughts were occupied with Tatya. Perhaps the girl also got here from the real world, but if she knew the plot of the original, she would not be so obsessed with Aster, who is not much different from the rest. If you think about it, Karina all this time believed that Tatya was just the main character of the game, but never tried to get to know her better. Karina's thoughts were interrupted by the emperor. The guy offered her to dance the first dance together. They formed a couple, becoming almost one. Aster asked what the girl was thinking about, and when he heard the answer, he asked her to focus on it. He was very jealous and asked only to enjoy their dance, after which the couple swirled in each other's arms. Tatya watched them from the sidelines, and all she could do was nervously bite her fingers. This time, the guests were discussing the princess again, but in this case, they were talking about how beautiful their couple looked, like a picture, and the girl was glad for the first time that people whispered about her, so much so that she was ready to burst into tears. Archduke Pioneer notified his daughter that he would be in his place that day, and asked to come to him, but he was not there. Having learned from the emperor that the mistress of the magic tower, Karina's mother, was also present at the banquet, the girl was seriously frightened and hurried to find her before trouble happened. In the hall, she found her mother grabbing Tatya by the hair. She was loudly cursing at the girl for taking away her daughter's fiancé. Andrew tried to intervene in the conflict, but also fell under the wrath of the magician. The woman shouted that the guy was pathetic if his wife revolved around others. Seeing Karina, her mother's face immediately changed. An angry squint was replaced by a joyful smile, and the Archduchess's hair was let go. The girl grabbed her by the arm and took her aside so as not to provoke an even greater conflict. Mother informed the princess that she would stay that night in the palace with her father. The Archduke tried so hard to escape, but he would still be forced to face the woman at home. The emperor joined the girls. He greeted the mistress of the magic tower. The woman immediately began to inspect the guy from all sides. The face was nothing like that, and the physique was dignified. Perhaps the emperor was even normal. He understood that his mother was worried about Karina, but he assured the woman that she had nothing to worry about because he was a good guy, and he really liked the princess. The magician wished her daughter a good date and blew a kiss. Karina was incredibly embarrassed because her mother was a special person. For a stare, the girl's mother turned out to be very interesting. He thought that the princess looked like an archduke, but she resembled her even more. Finally, the couple was left alone. Today, the emperor was waiting only for this moment. In the break room, Tatya sobbed in her usual manner. Her husband was standing next to her, and Daniel was sitting on the sofa opposite. She was furious that her friend didn't help her when she asked the emperor to dance with her. Titi said that the guy didn't care about her, and the fact that the girl was unhappy. The Archduke asked Daniel to come out, and Daniel left, not hesitating for a second, but thinking that Tatya was behaving like a madwoman. When the couple were left alone, the girl wondered if Andrew was angry with her, but the guy did not care at all that his wife did not want to dance with him. At this moment, Titi noticed that something was wrong with the bracelet, because recently she saw the level of sympathy very blurred. The Archduke asked his wife to remember two things. If she did not keep her promise, she would lose everything, and if she wanted to live, she should be responsible for her words. When Andrew finished speaking, he left the room without a sound. Tatia was glad that Karina thought that the bracelet was just showing a window of sympathy. If she touched something else, the girl would have problems, however. Despite the fact that the Archduchess returned the accessory to its previous state, it did not work as before. Suddenly, Ray appeared in front of the girl and she fell into his arms. When the guy asked if someone had offended her, Tatia answered in the negative, but Raymond did not believe it. The girl's eyes were red like a rabbit's. In fact, something really bothered the Archduchess. She asked the guy to fulfill her request related to Karina. Finally, the Emperor and the Princess came to the door of the Winter Garden. It was even more beautiful inside than outside. It was cool in the garden, and a stair covered Karina's shoulders with his cape. The Empress was a winter magician, and her father built this garden for her so that even in the cold she could enjoy beautiful flowers. Karina noted that the Emperor was a romantic. Due to the fact that Astor was born as a summer magician and his energy was different from his mother's, she was very weak. Then there was an incident with poisoning. The poison was not supposed to affect her at all, but for a weakened body, it was a huge blow. The woman gave birth to a son and died less than a year later. At each meeting, the father was angry with the boy and said that his mother died through his fault. And what happened next? Karina already knew. Due to his father's neglect, Astor's position as emperor was greatly weakened, so in order to increase his power, he had to kill all his brothers and those who stood in his way. The girl was angry at the injustice of the situation. A 1-year-old child could not do this, because the one who poured the poison was to blame, so the emperor should not blame the boy. Astor was very pleased that the girl supported him. She took his hand, noting that it was very cold, to which the emperor replied that people with cold hands have a warm heart. Suddenly, the thought occurred to her that sincerity is wonderful because the human class is able to see it. The faces of the guy and the girl were opposite each other at an unusually close distance. It would seem that right now the very moment should have happened, but someone very persistently began to call Karina. It seems that Duke Malfurion was diligently looking for her. Although the emperor was jealous of the girl, he still trusted her and let her go. After meeting with Daniel, Karina asked why he was looking for her, given the fact that all he had ever needed was Titi. The emperor decided that this conversation was not for his ears and departed, giving his former friends the opportunity to talk face to face. Daniel immediately blurted out that Tatia had become somehow strange. Of course, Karina was disappointed that the guy was looking for her just for this, and replied that the girl was always strange, but so was their relationship, since the Duke ran after a married girl and called her by her first name. In words, he and Karina were friends. Then the guy had always been on Tatia's side. Now that Daniel thought about it, he apologized and admitted how narrow-minded he was. This time, the princess was pleasantly surprised and accepted her friend's apology. Daniel felt as if the delusion had subsided. Since Karina and Titi had quarreled, he felt as if a crack had appeared in his heart. It seemed to him that Tatia was a fragile girl who needed to be protected by all means. But after that day, she seemed so deceitful that the very thought of her made the guy feel sick. Karina clearly did not expect to hear such words about Tatia from the guy, but he claimed that the girl was not at all the one he had known before. She had recently yelled at him for not helping her convince the emperor to dance with her, right in front of the Archduke, her husband. Deciding to find out something else, Karina asked Daniel if the seller of the bracelets he had given him was a mage. He could not remember exactly, so he suggested that the girl ask her mother about it, after which Karina said goodbye to the guy, advising him to reconsider his attitude towards Tatia so that he could get rid of many problems. After asking the butler that her mother was staying in her room and not in the living room, Karina went to meet her, thinking that perhaps her parents still had feelings for each other. After her breakup with Daniel, they divorced, not only because of her cold feelings, but also because she chose magic and he chose his family. They were so busy with their own affairs that they forgot about each other, and Karina's parting with Daniel was the last straw. The girl knocked on her mother's room, and after waiting a few minutes, she saw a breathless woman on the gunpowder. The princess asked her to tell something about the bracelet, and her mother asked where her daughter got it. Karina was seriously frightened and asked if there was any dangerous magic in the jewelry, but a quick glance was not enough to understand this, and the woman invited the princess into the room. Mrs. Pioneer poured her daughter tea and asked her to wait a little. Karina had not been in her mother's room for a long time. It had always been locked before, but nothing had changed here. Her father clearly took care of her. Mom suggested that Daniel gave the girl's bracelet and squeezed it in her hand with all her strength. Bracelets are a great base for a magical artifact, and this one is a mixture of seasonal magical stones of the highest grade. If magic stones just store magic, then seasonal stones give this magic. They're damn hard to get, and little is known about them. The person who created this bracelet is either a genius or a nut. Mom put the jewelry in a box to take to the tower and study it thoroughly. Soon she asked her daughter how they began to date the emperor, and without going into details, the girl replied that this was a very long and unexpected story. The woman noted that her daughter had always been a cautious girl and told her to act as her heart dictated, in any case, once she could have frolicked. Starting a conversation about men, her mother also could not help but mention Wilhelm. Karina replied that she had sent a divorce application, and everything should have already ended, but the guy behaved strangely, and the application has not yet been answered. The girl's attention was attracted by some noise. The confused mother said that it was a cockroach, which she still could not catch. At the table, Karina noticed a blue mustache and swung her mug with all her strength to kill the insect. It turned out that all this time the father was hiding behind the table, and the blue mustache was strands of his hair. When the daughter screamed, the man almost burst with laughter. He hid well, but when he heard Wilhelm's name, he could not restrain himself. Karina could not yet fully understand what the man was doing in her mother's room. Now there was nothing to worry about. The parents took over the showdown between Karina and her fiancé and promised to deal with everything. The Marquises of Honta tried to meet Karina's parents with all friendliness, not giving the impression that anything had gone wrong. The Pioneer family had long sent the Honts a divorce petition and could not wait for an answer. Wilhelm's father immediately stated that there had been a misunderstanding, and the son apologized to the princess. Wilhelm himself was called into the room to hear his excuses. He greeted the guests and began to listen to the interrogation with passion. The father wanted to convince the pioneers that his son sincerely apologized to the bride. That day, the servants had blocked his way, and the princess was obviously not eager to talk, so the boy lost his temper a little, but that was true love. To act without hesitation in the name of one's own love. In the name of love for Tatia, and for the sake of wanting to be with her, Wilhelm thought. He said that he apologized, but the princess said that she wanted a divorce. The guy admitted that he had made a mistake and regretted it. As for the words about wanting to become the lover of the Archduchess, the guy said that there was a misunderstanding, and he did not say it. Madame Pioneer had the title of Mistress of the Magic Tower for a reason, so she took the initiative to go to their estate to find out the truth. Magic would help create memories of that day, and she would find out whose words were true and whose were not. Using teleportation, the woman transported everyone to their palace. Then Karina asked if Wilhelm was ready to swear by his rank and honor as a knight. Honta's parents were very worried, but reassured themselves that their son would not lie. The guy agreed, and Mrs. Pioneer began to immerse herself in the memory. The woman warned that her head could turn a little. Everyone present saw what happened on the day when the guy was supposed to apologize to his fiancée, and Wilhelm's deception failed miserably. The guy decided to stand his ground to the end and said that he did not remember this. Karina's mother was very angry because her magic could not lie under any circumstances. The butler stood up for the Pioneer family, whom he served, because everything that the watchers now saw, the servants had only recently seen with their own eyes and heard with their own ears. Probably Wilhelm, who had sworn by the rank and honor of a knight, was not very pleased to look at himself from the outside. Now, no one had any doubts about who was to blame for the divorce. Thanks to Vil's act, the girl got the Sabin C, and now she was only looking for a good perfumer. Her mother sent Karina here, but this creepy place did not look like a perfume boutique at all. At the doorstep, the princess was met by a woman. She was not sure that the girl would find what she was looking for, but she was ready to show her the scents. Despite the small choice, the girl still decided on a bottle and asked to listen to this particular fragrance. At first, it was harsh, but after just a couple of moments, Karina found herself in a field covered with morning dew. The grass gently swayed at her feet, and a delicate floral aroma enveloped her. After making sure that a woman named Nivea was the owner of a perfume store, the girl offered her a partnership. However, the woman's reaction was completely unpredictable. She shouted that she was not going to work with the girl because she was also sent by the Archduchess. Karina was outraged by such a statement. She told about a rumor known to many that Tatia took 4 suitors from one girl, and the princess is the same girl, so it would be strange if she went to Tatia as a messenger. Nivea regretted jumping to conclusions and decided that Freya's family could still be trusted, but Karina wondered where the woman got such a reaction. Nivea said that once the Archduchess came to her and offered cooperation, she said that she wanted to create her own perfume brand and entrust all the management to her partner. However, the woman found one slippery point in the contract. There was a clause according to which all the recipes she created immediately became the property of the Archduchess. Nivea left her boutique to her daughter, who followed in her footsteps and also became a perfumer, but when she raised the issue of property rights and succession, Tatia suddenly became angry. The Archduchess was angry at the woman's disobedience and even threatened to kill her. Soon after, Nivea's customers disappeared, and people on the street didn't even want to talk to her anymore, as if the woman had committed some kind of crime. Nivea was very tired. No matter how hard the perfumer tried, it was useless, so she was going to leave here. Karina was terribly familiar with this situation. She had never crossed Toddy's path, but there were many dirty rumors about the girl. And then Astor appeared in her life, like a savior. The guy unconditionally believed her words and was the first to offer to help take revenge. It was Karina's turn to lend a helping hand. The princess decided to give the woman a chance and asked to be allowed to help her. Together they could restore the business and make it prosper. Nivea doubted the princess's capabilities because Tatia was an archduchess and had a certain power. Karina decided to show the woman that she was facing a man who was not afraid of Tatia. She said that she was dating the emperor, and perhaps she herself would soon become an empress. Then the girl's authority would be much higher than Tati's. She did not rush Nivea with the choice. He said that if the perfumer suddenly decided, then let him come to the house of the Duke of Pioneer. When Tatia took everything from Karina, lowering it to the very bottom, the girl dreamed that someone would say such words to her. During the tea party, the girl and her mother discussed Tatia. After all, she had the audacity to turn up her nose. Freya returned her daughter's bracelet. Even in the magic tower, they could not understand where it came from. The object was the perfect repository of magic. Mrs. Pioneer put her magic into the jewelry and instructed the girl to do as she had always taught her, then Karina would always be safe. The woman said that Tatia would definitely try to harm her daughter, but she would not always be able to protect her, so the girl should be careful, and Karina hugged her mother with all her love. A few days after her mother's departure, the princess was going on a picnic with the emperor, and her outfit was gorgeous, so mature, elegant, but at the same time, terribly sweet. Lily was terribly happy that everything was getting better in Karina's life. She was always there as a support, experiencing what was happening with the girl. Knocking on the princess's door, the servant said that a man named Lela was looking for her, and it was something urgent. Lela was the daughter of Nivea. The girl said that a fire suddenly broke out in the store, and her mother ordered to report the incident to the princess, and she herself returned, but the fire still cannot be extinguished. There was a book with recipes for fragrances, and the woman went after it. The fire does not go out, and the water does not help. If the fire cannot be extinguished with water, then it is not ordinary, but most likely magical, and then you need more help. Karina sent Lily to the Association of Magicians to send capable people to the scene of the fire, and herself, together with Lela, immediately prepared to go to the burning boutique. Time was catastrophically short, and the princess got on her horse, telling the girl to catch up in the carriage. Karina promised that she would save Nivea and set off. She arrived at the scene of the fire and was horrified. The flames were still very strong, and people could not cope with it. As the girl had assumed, the fire was magical, which meant that only other magic could extinguish it. It would take Lily a while to bring the mages here, but a little more, and Nivea would be dead. Karina snatched a bucket of water from the servant's hands and completely doused her body with it, from head to toe. The girl made a statement that the fire was created by magic, so everyone had to wait for the mages to arrive, while she, the daughter of the archmage Freya, would deal with the rescue of the owner of the boutique. Her mother once taught Karina magic. One of the lessons was to create a form that could only be desired. Freya believed that her daughter did well not be a magician, and she did all this so that the princess could protect herself from the magical power directed against her. Mother's bracelet gave the girl strength and confidence. It was only necessary to imagine the desired shape. Karina created a protective shell in the form of water around herself. She was no longer afraid of flames. When she finished, she immediately ran to save Nivea. In the midst of the fire, the women sat on the floor, holding a recipe book in her hands. She injured her leg and could not walk, so she asked Karina to give the handbook to Lela and said that her mother loved her very much. There was a lot of smoke in the room, and the woman lost consciousness. The princess could not leave it just like that. She was going to get out of here only with Nivea. Concentrating, Karina created a stronger shield, a large dome filled with clean air. Inhaling some oxygen, Nivea woke up and came to her senses. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Raymond appeared. Most likely, he had been watching the tragic situation all this time. Since Tatia did not know magic, Karina decided that the fire was started by the guy himself, but Raymond claimed that he had come to save the woman. The princess used the bracelet, hoping that it would help somehow, but the jewelry only allowed her to see the level of sympathy. Raymond was not a hero, and in his entire life, he did something for free only for Titi, so he offered Karina a contract. She gives the book the recipe, and he, in turn, pulls them both out of the room. Karina was only angered by these words, and the girl replied that she did not need his help. Raymond grabbed the princess's hand, letting her know that magic is not so simple, and she will not be able to get out with it. The girl had another ability of the bracelet window of choice. Confused, she did not check any of the options, and the answer was chosen automatically. Karina remained silent, and the guy's level of sympathy increased a little. He still stood his ground and waited for the princess to give the book back. The girl said that there was no other choice, and Raymond decided that she had finally come to her senses and would cooperate with him. However, Karina simply sent her former lover. On the verge of fainting, the girl still resisted. She simply could not do otherwise. Since the princess did not give the guy the book, he decided to take it himself. Suddenly, someone appeared behind Raymond, and feeling the appearance of a stranger, the guy tensed up a little. He just turned to examine the stranger as the stranger knocked him out. Karina was able to open her eyes to see what was happening. It seemed that the emperor had come to her aid. The princess woke up in her bed. Her throat was incredibly dry, and she asked Lily to give her a glass of water. It turned out that at that time the parents were in the girl's room. They were very worried, so much so that the Freya began to show her daughter her fingers so that she could name their number. They were really seriously frightened and were insanely glad that Karina came to her senses. The family was reunited in an embrace. Mrs. Pioneer told her daughter that she had acted recklessly and ended up sleeping for 5 days, but Nivea told her everything, and the woman thanked Karina for saving her friend. The girl asked what condition Nivea was in now. Everything was fine with the woman. She was in the hospital and woke up even before Karina. The princess said that she and the perfumer saw Raymond at the scene of the fire, and perhaps he did it. But Freya hastened to convince her daughter. The guy was registered in a magic tower, and if he started a fire, everyone would immediately know about it. The man who had done it had been damn prudent. He had blocked the magic, and it was impossible to recover the memories. Her father also investigated. Fortunately, Nivea had insurance, so the restoration of the building should not be a problem, so Karina could focus on her recovery. On the table was a pile of letters written by the emperor while the girls slept, and Astaire said he would send letters every day until his lover answered him. A couple of days had passed since then, and Karina had almost recovered, and she and the emperor exchanged letters every day, despite the fact that the guy was very busy calculating the defense budget. The girl was reading another letter when the butler came into her room with the news that Mrs. Nivea had arrived on a visit to the palace. The woman was grateful to Karina for saving her life, but still decided to refuse the offer of cooperation. That day, she inhaled too much smoke and stopped smelling fragrances. The hospital said that there was very little chance of recovery, and the woman could no longer consider herself a perfumer. Karina believed that Nivea had been through too much to give up so easily, despite the difficulties. For the sake of the recipe book, she risked her own life, and her many years of experience also did not go anywhere. The girl called on the perfumer to fight to the very end. The woman was pleased that the princess was trying so hard for her, and she agreed to follow the girl, but on one condition. Niva wanted Lela to be the main perfumer. Despite her youth, she was not just talented, she was a genius. Karina agreed and moved on to discuss the details. This summer, her family was supposed to arrange a masquerade ball, held annually since the time of the first Duke. Even before it starts, the ball becomes the most exciting topic to discuss, so it was a great opportunity to place their goods, especially given that aristocrats are extremely sensitive to self-care. The only catch was that there was only a week left before the masquerade ball, and the schedule would have been tight, but Nivea was not frightened at all. Karina asked Lily to prepare the carriage for departure, despite the fact that she still hadn't fully recovered. To catch a tiger, you need to climb into its den, and the girl was going to do just that, declare war on the tiger. On the way, the princess reflected on how unfair this world was. It existed only for the sake of Tatya and revolved exclusively around her. That's what the girl thought until now, and yet quite recently she almost died. She and Nivea were not just puppets who existed solely for Tatya's sake. In the palace of the Archduke of Gloucester, Karina drank tea, waiting for the appearance of the Archduchess. Tatya did not expect the appearance of a friend. Of course, she heard the terrible news and said that she was worried about the girl. Karina told her that the owner of the store had lost her sense of smell, and this really worried her. Titi did not understand why the princess was telling her this. Despite the Archduchess's excuses, the girl was well aware of who was to blame for the fire, so she came to the palace to remind her former friend that she had ruined someone's life. Karina was about to leave when Tatya shouted that she had nothing to do with it. The girl stated that it was all the princess's fault because she was trying to take away what Titi could not. Out of anger, the Archduchess nudged her friend on the shoulder and accused Karina of being jealous of her and therefore meddling in everything that the girl wanted to take possession of. Tatya said that all that shines from the princess from her hands is worthless garbage that did not give up to her. The Archduchess began to talk about how Aster was just like everyone else, and Karina slapped her in the face with all her might. Tatya was taken aback, but, getting even angrier, swung at the princess. However, the girl easily intercepted her hand. The earrings on Karina were artifact, and she wrote down every word her rival said on them. Titi said that it was very mean, but in this situation, it was certainly not for her to talk about meanness. The princess made it clear to the girl that the world would no longer be so kind to her, and hurried to leave. Going out to the servants, Karina told them why the girls quarreled, disgracing Tatya. Titi was about to quarrel with the princess, but remembering the recorded conversation, she fell silent. The princess was determined to make her ex-friend pay for a long time for her ruined life, and for the life of Nivea. On the street, the girl was stopped by the Archduke. Probably he wanted to chat with her about something, but Karina was not in the mood to talk to her ex-boyfriend. Andrew grabbed her hand, and the girl immediately asked her to let her go. The Gloucester couple was worth each other. Both continued to flirt even after the wedding. The Archduke asked Karina to take a couple of minutes, but the girl advised him to send an official request to the Duke's estate and hurried to leave. Previously, just looking at him brought tears to my eyes, but time really heals. The maid offered the Archduchess tea, but Tatya asked to be left alone. Hearing the whispers, the girl went to the door to understand what was being said and made out that the servants were discussing rumors about her. Tatya had a bad habit. Every time the Archduchess got nervous, she bit her nails and the skin around her. When the girl was 19 years old, everything was completely different. Even then, with the help of a bracelet, she increased the sympathy of the guys around her. Everyone admired Titi's caring and kindness, and Lady Karina was considered the Ice Queen. In the courtyard of the academy, Tatya noticed a friend with some guy and called her to say hello. On the weekend, she and Daniel were going to a cafe, and the future Archduchess invited the girl to spend time with them. Karina refused, referring to a meeting with her boyfriend. As soon as she left, the students immediately began to discuss that the girl was dating a guy worse than herself, so that he would definitely not leave her. Tatya pretended, as always, in her usual manner that she was worried about her friend. In the garden, Andrew was reading a book when someone touched his cheek with a finger. The guy thought that Karina approached him, but when he saw her friend in front of him, he was very surprised. The girl asked to see his book, and guessing the choice, offered Andrew to be friends. Finally, Karina could relax and enjoy spa treatments. Lily kneaded the cream on her own and did a wonderful massage. The princess felt as if in paradise and believed that the girl should open a massage business. Finally, the princess was collected. Thanks to Lily, she looked and felt great. His Majesty was already waiting for the girl in the courtyard of the residence. Karina asked if Aster was tired of her, and the Emperor replied that he loved his job very much. The couple was very happy to meet each other and decided to take a walk. The emperor asked the girl when she had learned magic, and Karina was embarrassed, saying that her powers were not so powerful, and that if it weren't for him, she and Nevia might have been dead by now. The guy claimed that he arrived only when it was over. Probably the girl mistook someone else for Astaire. She knew she had made a mistake, but those eyes were exactly the same as the emperor's. In any case, the guy thought Karina was incredible even without magic. She had barely learned and had already saved a man. She dived into the raging flames without hesitation. The girl doubted that she had acted unwisely and could harm other people, but Astaire promised that he would always be by her side, in love and in politics, and asked her not to doubt herself. Archduke Andrew was on his way to meet with the emperor, not understanding why he had called him because no incidents had happened. He asked the guest to come and sit down. It turns out that he was not going to scold. The man decided to get straight to the point and said that he had to thank the Archduke. He found out that Andrew had been on Varus Street a couple of weeks ago. There was a problem in the guy's boutique, and his personal presence was required. The emperor continued that on that day a fire broke out in one of the boutiques. Andrew was worried because he was sure that no one had seen him then. The man said that Karina thought that he had saved her, but the emperor was not there. The Archduke admitted that he accidentally passed by and managed to help. The emperor's face changed, but said that everything was fine, and Andrew was worthy of the award, and handed him the precious seasonal gems. The guys said goodbye, and the Archduke headed towards the exit. It felt as if a wild animal was burning his back with a look. Still, the emperor decided to ask the guy one more question. He already knew that Gloucester's wife did not like Karina very much, and suspected whether it was their doing. Astaire pressed Gloucester with magic, and Gloucester began to make excuses that Raymond was most likely to blame for what had happened when he appeared in the capital, but he only made it worse. Now, knowing that Andrew had gone to see Raymond, the emperor did not understand how he dared to claim that he had accidentally saved Karina. Andrew always pretended to know nothing, and always wanted to take away what belonged to Astaire. As a child, the Duke was loved by his father more than Astaire. The man was ready to give everything to the boy, even if Astaire already had it. He was looking for much better things for the youngest. Astaire had to reassure himself that everything would be fine, and he would become emperor anyway. A few years after that, the previous emperor died, and a fierce struggle for the imperial throne began. After killing the second prince, the main culprit of the riots, Astaire immediately came to Andrew. The guy escaped, and thanks to this, he survived. If someone encroached on the throne of the emperor, the first person Astaire would think of was his half-brother. Now he was extremely lucky again. Because of his reputation, the emperor could not finish off the duke, so he pretended to believe in his words. Leaving Astaire's office, the guy took off his nervous smile and panicked. Returning to his residence, Gloucester nervously asked the maid where his wife was. Of course, the woman saw that something was wrong with the couple. The couple behaved as if they were ready to kill each other, and on the first night, even a dagger flashed. Finally, finding Tatia, the Duke demanded that the girl give him the bracelet. He wondered where the magic he had put into the first night had gone. Stiffening, the girl said that she did not know if there was magic in the bracelet at all or not. Andrew realized that his wife was deceiving him and, angry, pushed her aside. The guy shouted that there was not a drop of conscience left in the girl, and she ruined his life. Tatia did not understand what she had done wrong, but apologized to her husband, shedding tears. The Duke knew that Raymond had secretly used his magic to start a fire. He reminded the girl not to forget that their marriage rests only on her promise to make him emperor, so she should stop doing nonsense. At night, the girl went to someone's house located in the depths of the forest. Ray met her on the threshold. The guy was covered in abrasions and scratches, but for the sake of Titi, he was ready to endure anything. He guessed that the girl wanted to ask him something, otherwise why would she come to such darkness? Tatia always twisted a strand of hair around her finger when she wanted to ask Raymond for something difficult. This time, Ray suffered because of the girl, so she was embarrassed to ask him for anything. But as soon as the guy said that he was ready to do anything for her, Titi asked to kill Karina. In the commercial district on Workshop Street, the princess and Lily were already in a hurry to see the perfumers. Mother and daughter were happy to have guests. They apologized for the mess and asked the girls to come in. Things were going well, but Nivea and Lela had not slept for 3 days, spending time exploring. Being a maid who loves cleanliness, Lily immediately began to clean everything around, while the princess asked the girls to show her new scents. Finally, everyone sat down at the round table, and Lela began her presentation. The new fragrance was created for the strong girls of this world. Spicy top notes create a strong impression, middle notes are soft and glamorous, and base notes are subtle, long. The perfumer did much better than the princess expected, and now it was time to ask questions. The girl was interested in whether noble girls would be interested in a product that was very different from others, and Lela replied that the fragrance has a good persistence of bright, sharp top notes and is also familiar to girls, but with its own charm. Like the princess, Lily believed that the perfumer was an undisputed genius. She not only created good fragrances, but also had a good understanding of perfume seasons. Of course, Karina was taken aback when she found out that Lela wanted to name the fragrance after her, believing that she did not deserve to be a muse for such a fragrance. The perfumer made it clear to the girl that she knows how to wait for the right moment and does not hesitate to act when necessary. She is brave and always ready to help, so the fragrance conveys the image of the lady who fought the flames that day, saving Nivea's life. The sun was already beginning to set, and the perfumers said goodbye to the girls, wishing them a safe journey. Karina was glad that she was able to help Nevea and Lela, preventing Tatia from ruining such a talent. In the past, she would not even think of involving someone in her revenge, but the teamwork turned out to be surprisingly effective. For the first time, Karina, as much as Lily, was waiting for the ball. In the palace, the emperor received good news. His rating among the residents increased by 20% compared to last year. The reason for this was the policy of friendliness towards the people, as well as friendly relations with the Pioneer family. Upon learning that Princess Pioneer had arrived at the palace, the emperor completed his report and dismissed the advisors. When we met, he apologized that every time she was invited to boring workplaces, but the girl, on the contrary, liked it. In this way, she felt closer to Astaire. Today, Karina had come to give the boy an invitation to the family ball. She didn't want him to feel obligated, so she was ready to accept a refusal if the emperor was still busy. Despite the large amount of work, Astaire promised to set aside time and come. After all, it was about their relationship, and he could not refuse his beloved. Karina's outfit for the ball looked excellent, but the girl doubted that perhaps it was too revealing. Parents were dumbfounded when they saw their daughter. As is typical of parents, they were worried that the outfit was too provocative. Besides, Karina said that she did not like such clothes. On the girl's 10th birthday, Tatia dressed up more beautifully than the birthday girl herself, and that day, Karina was very upset. At that time, she lived quietly so as not to influence the original, but that was enough. Today, the girl was going to shine. The ball began. Everyone had a great time, enjoying the atmosphere and communication. Suddenly, the lights went out, and the guests were seriously frightened. In the spotlights, Princess Karina appeared to greet all the guests of their family ball. Before the celebration would begin in full force, the girl decided to give everyone present something unprecedented before and presented the prepared fragrance. Pioneer's parents proudly watched their daughter from the sidelines, roasting the girl. The ladies were delighted with the performance. Paper butterflies fluttered around the hall, soaked in an amazing aroma, which would not be easy to forget now. Karina was glad that the reaction of the guests was good, and the ball was successful. In her youth, the princess thought that her suitors were being taken away from her because of her role, but it turned out that the girl drove herself into this framework. For the first time in a long time after greeting Mrs. Butterfly, Daniel gave her such a gentle look and complimented her. The girl wished her friend a good evening and went on, but the guy called out to her. Daniel invited Karina to dance with him, and in light of the latest events, the girl was going to refuse. Just a couple of meters from them, a glass of champagne broke. The owner of the glass was Tatia. With a pitying look, she asked how her friend could betray her. 4 hours before the ball, Titi was very nervous. It didn't look like a girl, and she wanted to get rid of Karina as soon as possible. The maid who brought the girl tea found the Archduchess with a finger bitten to blood and was horrified. Bandaging Tatia with her finger, she expressed doubts about whether the girl should go to the ball, since she did not feel very well. But for the Archduchess, the letter was not just an invitation, but a warning that Karina was going to take her place. From the woman, Titi learned that her husband was not yet ready. She would have to leave first. The maid encouraged the girl that soon everything would get better for them. Tatia agreed, because no matter what anyone said, she considered herself special. When the Archduchess was at the ball, all eyes were on her again. The girl lived in reveling in the admiration, boasting, and envy of other people for her. All this was a balm for her soul. However, this evening, high society was talking not only about her. People's attention was also riveted by the aroma of Karina. Lela, whom Tatya recognized as Nevia, told the girl about the aroma and asked her to breathe in order to listen to it. Titi felt uncomfortable. There was a feeling as if something was wrong. Helping herself at the buffet, out of the corner of her eyes, the girl noticed her devoted fan Daniel. Not only had his sympathy decreased to 50%, but he had also come here secretly from the girl. Tatia decided to return the guy's sympathy and, going after him, saw an unpleasant picture for herself. The girl burst into tears, and Daniel's level of sympathy began to rise. Everything went as planned. Karina intervened in what was happening, even amused by the fact that, being married to the Archduke, Titi was flirting with a friend. The girl left her friends to have fun with each other and was going to go in the opposite direction. This time, Daniel could not leave everything just like that and ran after the princess, asking them to talk together. The girl did not understand why this was necessary. Last time she said that she did not consider Tatya and Daniel her friends. It seems that they have completely lost their conscience or reason, since they have forgotten Karina's nickname, which appeared in the academy because of them. In her 17th autumn, when Tachi started dating Daniel, she definitely thought she was the main character and chose Daniel as her main character. And so I thought that the reign of the original was also over. Due to the influence of the original, no matter what Tatia did, she was perceived positively by those around her, and if Karina was angry with the girl, she was treated like a villain. One day, Titi and the guys got together without Karina. Titi told them about how Daniel confessed that he liked her more than Karina when he was a child. The guys believed that the girl was just interfering with the couple because Titi was so sweet and beautiful that Karina felt inferior because of this, envying her friend. That day, Karina heard everything the guys were talking about, including the fact that she was nicknamed the Envious Princess. The girl could not understand why she was treated this way. Tatia was the main character, and she was just a secondary character, and yet Karina considered her her friend. During lunch in the dining room, she heard the condemnations of her classmates. Every word was a dagger in the girl's heart. No matter how superfluous it was, Karina was not going to tolerate such an attitude, so she asked Tatya and Daniel to stop the rumors. Titi sympathized with her friend's misfortune and said that she was not to blame for these rumors. Most of all, the girl was confused by Daniel. As a friend, he gave her advice that rumors do not appear unfounded, so the princess should think about it. Seeing these two, who completely contradicted each other, Karina finally understood that it doesn't matter what family she comes from, how she looks, what skills she has, because Tatia is the main character, and the girl is just a secondary character who can be insulted. Karina called Daniel a coward. He did not want to become bad, and at the decisive moment he was silent in a rag. So if he wanted to continue to falsely call her his friend, he should have thought about what he really was. Tatia pretended to be a victim, sobbing and accusing the girl of coldness. All attention was again turned to the Archduchess. The guests were discussing that the Princess Pioneer had made a mistake, and looking at the crying girl, their hearts bled. The Emperor appeared at the celebration. He thought that 2-on-1 was somehow unfair and invited the princess to take her side. There was no longer any need for this, because the Archduke appeared next to Titi. He asked his wife to stop making scandals and apologize. The girl shouted that she did not want to do this and ran down the stairs. Watching how well the Emperor and Princess were interacting, Andrew was a little upset and left as well. Astor apologized to Karina for being late and whispered something in her ear. The guy laughed. It was a masquerade ball and the girl had to keep his identity a secret, although everyone already understood who was in front of them. After a little more laughing, Astaire invited the princess to have fun together, and she gladly accepted his invitation. The guy did not like sweets, but he still ate it at the celebration. The more Karina got to know him, the sweeter he seemed to her. Astaire did not understand why everyone loved masquerades so much, but after taking part, he began to get imbued. With a covered face, it was calmer in the soul, and knowing each other, you could pretend that you did not know each other, feel freedom without revealing your identity. The guy asked Karina if she felt freedom. He had long noticed that the girl was constantly thinking and worrying about something. The princess was betrayed very often, and she stopped believing in herself. Apparently, that's why Karina worried about everything. She was already drunk and asked to talk about something funny. Since the princess invited the emperor to such a grand celebration, he decided to reciprocate and invited her to a hunting festival in the palace. The girl was worried that the event was very important, and she probably shouldn't be present at it, but Astaire felt her burden and said that if she accepted the game he caught, it would be enough. He asked the princess not to apologize anymore, as he said that he would always be by her side, so she could be selfish and use him. Whether it was alcohol or not, Karina's heart was beating so fast as if she was about to jump out. Titi could no longer find a place for herself at the ball and stood against the wall with her head bowed. Andrew approached the girl to return home together, but she refused, afraid. Her husband had a gentle voice and a warm palm, but the same cold look. The guy did not try to persuade his wife and went to the exit alone. The girl felt unwell. Tatia again heard rumors about her life together with her husband, begging for someone to help her. Titi's bracelet sparkled in a special way, as if it gave hope to the owner. Raising her head in front of her, the girl saw Daniel, and a friend offered to accompany her. On the street, they approached the carriage. The guy said that it was his transport, and Tatia could get on to go home. He also added that he is her friend, so Titi can always turn to him. She decided that the guy was still kind to her. Titi walked over to Daniel to hug his back, but he pushed his friend away. The guy admitted that Karina was right, and from now on, he will keep his distance from the girl. On the way home, Tatia nervously bit her bandaged fingers. First Andrew, and now Daniel looked at her like that. The girl thought that Karina had done something, otherwise it could not have happened. She needed to get rid of her rival as soon as possible. Some desperate guy blocked the way of the carriage, practically throwing himself under it. With a sharp movement, the coachman had to stop the transport so as not to harm the madman. The guy went to the carriage itself, and the man tried to stop him, but nothing worked. Wilhelm opened the door, and looking inside to make sure that the Archduchess was inside, climbed into the carriage. He frightened the girl very much. First the carriage twitched, pinning Titi, and now some guy was breaking into her. Wilhelm's level of sympathy tended to 100. With tears in his eyes, he begged his beloved to answer why she was avoiding him. Tatia pressed her palm to his cheek and replied that she had avoided the guy for his own good. She said that people suspected them of being romantically involved, but Wilhelm didn't care. He believed that it was okay to be lovers in their time, and he didn't care about other people's looks because he had already given up everything for her. All the documents and the inheritance went to Karina. He was kicked out of the guard, and almost the same from the house. The knight refused everything just to be next to the girl. Desperate, he threw himself into the arms of his beloved, and Titi promised that she would not leave him. The Archduke did not understand how Tatia could ask him to receive her lover, his guard. Of course, the girl did not consider him a lover, but just a friend, but other people hardly thought so. If Andrew accepted Wilhelm into his guard, then he would be considered a jerk who gave his place to his wife's lover. Tatia understood that her husband needed strength, so she said that William was one of the outstanding swordsmen of the Empire, and if Andrew had enough strength, he could resist the Emperor. After a little thought, the Archduke agreed with Titi. The guy was ready to accept a lover to return what belonged to him. Leaving her husband's office, the girl first leaned against the wall and then fell to the floor. After the incident with the bracelet, dizziness worsened due to excitement. However, it was not the time at all. Titi needed to concentrate, otherwise she would lose to Karina. The masquerade ball was coming to an end. Enthusiastic guests thanked the princess for the celebration and wondered when the perfume would go on sale. Judging by the good reaction to the product, the girl could play big. Perhaps it was even worth improving the packaging and releasing a collector's edition. Lily, as the most devoted fan of the princess, was very proud of the girl that evening for the way she rubbed the nose of her offenders and was glad that at the right moment the Emperor appeared in Karina's life. The girls wished each other good night, and Karina noticed a bright light coming from the box in which she had placed her bracelet. The princess opened it, and bright rays illuminated the whole room. A game notification popped up in front of the girl. One of the endings was unlocked because Karina took the Sabency from Wilhelm and started a perfume business. The new notice said that making achievements eased the stiffness characteristic, and the girl felt the space around her become freer. Of course, Karina guessed, but seeing the word stiffness with her own eyes was strange. So, the reason that the princess felt a strange increase in Tati's influence earlier was because the girl had passed Andrew's ending, and the original stiffness had weakened. In any case, now Karina was sure that watching the ending weakened this effect. If she watched it, she might be able to see the foundation of the Daniel Malfurion Honorary Hospital right now. She only finds and sponsors doctors who research new surgical techniques. Karina only needed to open a hospital on the site. Reaching the ending with Raymond will be the most difficult. He is very hostile towards the princess, and in the ending, which was known to her, he refuses his status as the owner of the Magic Tower and swears allegiance to Tati. Raymond would never be loyal to Karina, and it would be difficult with him, so the girl decided to think about it later. She had to attack Daniel first. An important conversation that required a personal meeting with Daniel was in the western lands of his territory. Although it was late, the princess was going to take them away as compensation for the breakup of the engagement. And again, Tatia was mentioned in the story. Recently, the guy sold these lands to her. Karina was amazed at her friend's stupidity. He sold his land without even asking why. Titi also went to Nivea before her, and this time she bought the land. The girl behaved as if she knew the original endings, and it was not just a coincidence. Then the princess asked Daniel to introduce her to his close friend, who specialized in magic and medicine, even if in the wrong place. Then with the same people, she would open a hospital. Maybe there would be a chance to influence the ending. Daniel hesitated again. Karina would not be at all surprised if Tatia took his friend Robert as well. In fact, after the guy was kicked out of the family, he and Daniel stopped communicating. In this case, the girl asked her friend to find out where Robert was now. Daniel promised that he would comply with her request, and again began to apologize for the incidents at the academy. If he was really sorry, Karina asked the guy not to hide behind hypocrisy anymore. This was the only way to get her forgiveness. The girl sat at the table in her room and she thought that everything would be simple, but she did not succeed. She did not get any land, and she had not yet found a doctor. Just in case, she decided to try the ending with Raymond. The problem was that Karina didn't know how much the ending should match the original. The key word in Raymond's ending was Tatia's fidelity. It is possible that any of his actions proving loyalty to Karina would count as a condition of the ending. It was worth experimenting, but Raymond would not swear fidelity to the girl. Suddenly, an idea dawned on her. A couple of days later, one of the knights of Pioneer Manor informed the princess in the middle of the night that Raymond had invaded her house. The guards grabbed him and locked him in the food warehouse, so the girl hurried to meet the intruder. Everything was going better than she thought. In the warehouse, the guy was tied with ropes to a chair, and his mouth was tied with a cloth. Raymond couldn't say a word, and Karina was even glad. Finally, the guy stopped being noisy, couldn't use his great magic, and could feel like an ordinary person. The girl took off the bandage from her former lover and notified him that she had compromising evidence on Tatia, and therefore, if he truly loved her, he had to offer Karina a deal. Raymond wasn't going to make a deal with someone like her, and the princess believed that someone like him should crawl at her feet. The difference between them was that Karina was self-critical, while the guy wasn't. Even his own family had abandoned Carcel, and he had not yet become the owner of the Magic Tower. Besides, because of his terrible character, he had a lot of enemies, but he was arrogant. Karina grabbed the guy by the collar and said that from the moment she sent the letter, she foresaw that he would sneak into her house because she saw through people like him. Raymond tried to prove to the princess that she was no better than him, but the girl only laughed. She was no longer the same Karina from the academy, incapable of meanness. Unlike when the fire had occurred, now she had indisputable evidence that the mage had invaded her house. Raymond would have been immediately thrown out of the candidates for the position of the owner of the Magic Tower, and then Karina would have distributed Tatia's recording in the royal palace. Provoking a fire and insulting the emperor if you are lucky, hard labor if not, head off your shoulders. Raymond asked what the girl wanted, and she joked that she needed his body, which caused a violent reaction from the guy. Getting down to business, Karina put forward her conditions. The royal hunt was about to begin, on which Raymond had to present her with all the game, which meant devotion and love. Of course, the guy was not delighted with such an idea, but the choice remained small, either not to see the place of the owner of the tower or to step over his pride once. The princess had sent for the guards to free Ray, and until that time he had time to think. Since Karina couldn't take Raymond's word for it, she handed him the contract. All she had to do was sign it. The content of the document caused the guy's indignation, because it said that during the royal hunt, Raymond must present game to Karina, and until that moment he is obliged to unquestioningly obey the girl. In case of violation of the contract, he loses all his magical power and loses his place as the owner of the Magic Tower. In the end, Carcel had to agree and he put his signature. The girl put her charm on the contract, so a brand appeared on the guy's neck. His magic power still hadn't returned, and Raymond was angry that he couldn't use magic. He began to give orders again, which angered Karina, and the girl threw the guy out the door. Raymond promised that he would curse her for the rest of his afterlife if he suddenly died at the hands of some street killers. At this time, an unknown person was watching the mage from the bushes. Standing in the street, Carcel had already managed to regret that he had not listened to Titi's request. The guy refused the girl's call to kill Karina, and she threw a tantrum. The Archduchess shouted that Ray was a liar because he promised to do everything for her. In fact, the mage was not eager to end up in prison. Besides, he did not hate the princess enough to kill. Titi accused the guy of being the same as all men and was about to leave. Raymond asked the Archduchess not to leave and took a ring from the box. It was made of wood stone with magic that could control consciousness. If the girl had used it correctly, then her tangled relationship with Karina could cease to be a problem. In addition, the ring did not leave any magical traces behind, so Titi did not have to worry. Immediately changing her face, she threw herself into Raymond's arms. Taking pity on the guy, Karina nevertheless opened the door. Judging by the guilty look, he stood and called her names all this time. The princess wondered if Ray had regained his strength, and he proudly demonstrated his abilities. As a sign of kindness to her slave, the girl attached a guard to him. Watching what was happening, the unknown man in the tree regretted that he had missed such a great opportunity. On the street, Duke Daniel clung to Karina, explaining that the area was very dangerous and the guy himself wanted to see Robert. Near the doctor's house, creditors were noisy, and those who were clearly at odds with the law. Daniel volunteered to deal with the guys. The princess did not suspect that the guy, it turned out, could be so masculine. Confused, he began to mumble something, and the fat man pressed the guy against the wall, hinting that he should take a turn. Malfurion apologized to the girl that nothing worked out for him. Daniel was who he was. Karina called out to the guys so that they would pay attention to her, and whistled with all her might. The knight landed right in front of the girl, preparing to protect the lady. According to the laws of the Empire, unregistered persons were forbidden to give loans or credits to other citizens. As a representative of the Capitol Guard, the guy had every right to detain them. Daniel did not understand what had just happened, and the girl explained that His Majesty had assigned a guard to her. Entering the house, the young people greeted Robert, who was not yet in sight. Karina found the man under the table. He begged to be spared, and then he would definitely return the debt. Making sure that there were familiar faces in front of him, Robert finally got up from the floor and greeted the guests. The princess introduced herself and asked the man to take some time for her. Robert recognized the girl. She was the one with whom Daniel broke off the engagement, and the man was glad that they got back together. Karina made it clear to Robert that he was mistaken, and in fact, she came to him to offer him the position of the head doctor of the hospital. The man said that they had the wrong addresses because someone like him has no right to be a doctor. Although the girl did not know the whole situation, as well as did not know the exact reasons, she knew that then, 3 years ago, his research was suspended. Karina asked the doctor to become a doctor in her hospital and continue his research. Robert was grateful for the honor bestowed on him, but suggested more worthy candidates than him, Eric Foreman and Allison Cameron, the doctors with whom he conducted his research. He could say nothing more and asked the young people to leave. Of course, Karina no longer remembered everything exactly, but she was sure that at the end of the game, there were 3 doctors. Daniel told her that the 3 of them had studied and worked in Dr. Gregory's lab, but as far as he knew, after the doctor died of an incurable disease, they had separated. Foreman comes from a poor family, and after the closure of the laboratory, he dropped out due to financial problems, and Allison works as Tatia's attending physician. In fact, it wasn't that Daniel hid it from Karina, it was just that she never asked, and besides, she was always in a bad mood when it came to Tati. The guy always talked about accidents when it came to the relationship between the princess and the Archduchess, and the girl asked if in the end he broke up with her and went to Tatia, also by mistake. For absolutely everyone, Daniel wanted to be a good person, but in the end, in the eyes of Karina, he became just a hypocrite. In any case, the girl did not hope for the help of a friend, but the end for Raymond could not be the same as in the game, so I would like everything to end for Daniel exactly as it was in the original. So it was necessary to get the 3 of them together and appoint Robert to the position of chief physician. But first, it was necessary to figure out what kind of cat had run between them. Daniel stopped Karina. He could help the girl at least somehow, because he knew where Eric Foreman was. It so happened that Mr. Foreman worked in a common laboratory, which Tatia had arranged for him to do at the request of Mrs. Allison. Once again, Karina assumed that, as in the case of Nivea, the Archduchess was dealing with a trio of doctors. The young people met Eric, and Karina introduced herself to the guy. She asked why the doctor did not continue the study, to which he replied that due to his social status, the issue of money had always been important to him. Thanks to the fact that Foreman had studied a lot before, now he was somehow able to make ends meet. The girl said that Robert recommended a colleague to her. However, it turned out that the friends no longer communicated. In any case, Karina planned to open a hospital, so she invited a man to become part of their team to continue her research. A 4-day work week, flexible hours, paid vacation. She promised better conditions than his current employer. Of course, there was no need to make a decision right now, so if Foreman had any questions, he could send a letter to the Pioneer family estate. Finally, the doctor asked Karina to betray something to Robert if they crossed paths again. Tell him that they had no other choice then. After a while, the butler handed the girl a letter, nevertheless sent by the doctor. Along with the letter, the man also provided documents with information from the association, thanks to which it was possible to clarify what happened between the trio. As Karina thought, it happened in the same month 3 years ago. After the death of the professor, Allison became Tatia's attending physician at the same time that the girl contacted Nivea. Well, if the princess was planning to meet Allison, only one day was suitable for that. At that moment, a breathless Lily ran into the room, hurrying to report something. The girl shouted that something terrible had happened. Because of her shortness of breath, she couldn't say anything related, so the butler went to get a glass of water for her. Finally, when Lily came to her senses, she said that a new perfume boutique had appeared right in front of the store they were preparing to open. In addition, the boutique belonged to the family of the Marquises of Haunt and not to the ducal family of Gloucester. Probably Tatia did not want to act openly, so she used the Marquis for this idea. It was rumored that Lord William had been appointed Master of the Knightly Order of the Silver Dragon, owned by the ducal family of Gloucester. Of course, Lily was indignant that someone like him had become the master of the order. Something told Karina that Tatia had sent Wilhelm, who simply had nowhere to go, to the order, and as a price she asked to open a boutique. Lily also understood perfectly well that this was not a coincidence and was even more indignant. After all, this was to be expected, and besides, the appearance of a competitor in close territory is a common thing in business. Karina did not despair at all, believing that any crisis is a new opportunity to make her own boutique the best. After such news, the princess gathered the girls together so that they could all come to their senses a little and decide what to do next. Now that a new fragrance was unveiled at the masquerade last week, they are faced with a new problem. Namely, the appearance of a competitor right in front of them. Since this nefarious perfume boutique preceded the opening of their store by just a couple of days, they had to trample on their competitor, who knew nothing about business ethics. The flame of anger was kindled, and the girls agreed with Karina without objection. Today, there was only one issue on the agenda. They postponed the opening of the boutique. At such a statement, Lily, Nivea, and Lella opened their mouths in surprise. It would seem that with the appearance of a competitor, they should, on the contrary, speed up the opening. Besides, thanks to the masquerade ball, their perfumes were on everyone's lips. Karina handed the girls a document with names. These were customers who immediately decided to buy as soon as they heard the aroma of perfume at the ball. For starters, they would sell the perfume in one batch to all 100 high-ranking people on this list. As the girls could already understand after attending the ball, in such a small community as the aristocracy, any information spread very quickly. Rumors about their perfumes will spread like a virus, and when everyone is talking about them and people's interest is at its maximum, they will open a boutique right after the end of the royal hunt. It will be the best perfume boutique in the empire in Nivea and Lella. Therefore, now they were not going to shake with fear and open the store in a hurry, on the contrary, to wait to gain strength and let their brand grow. Regarding this, Karina's plan had 2 points. On the first floor, there will be perfume lines for an ordinary mass market client, and on the second and third floors, there will be premium class lines. Nivea decided to put forward a proposal that she had been postponing for a long time due to financial problems. It was about creating basic cosmetics using the scents of their perfumes. For example, some bath products or body creams would go well with their base fragrances. Thus, even those who are not very fond of using perfumes could enjoy these beautiful fragrances. Besides, together with such cosmetics, the aroma of perfume will be revealed more deeply. In addition, by combining cosmetics and perfumes, everyone can create a unique fragrance that is unlike anything else. However, there was one big problem. In order for cosmetics to retain their aroma for a long time, it was necessary to use alchemy. It was said that 3 years ago, the Carcel family received a patent to work in this field, so their help was needed to implement this idea. By an amazing coincidence, 3 years ago, after the departure of the Archduchess and the cessation of funding, all alchemists, including the people of the Carcel family, severed ties with Nivea. The woman was still angry remembering that incident. Karina asked not to worry about it and promised that she would find her an alchemist. Then Nivea proposed the candidacy of Raymond Carcel, and the princess did not quite understand what she was talking about. As the woman's intuition suggested, Archduchess Tatia was in cahoots with the alchemists of the Carcel family, registered with the association. They acted as if any communication with her would turn out to be something terrible for them, but Raymond was different from all of them. Even if the guy was not part of the association, he still belonged to the Carcel family and was an alchemist himself, so he could easily use loopholes in the system. Of course, it was his fault that Nivea had lost her recipes and her sense of smell, but she didn't want to let fleeting emotions get in the way of her work. Now their primary task was to start a business and make it successful. Karina noticed that Nivea had changed a lot since their first meeting, as if she had spread her wings. She told the woman that she was really a strong person. Now, Nivea has definitely decided that she will believe in her and her daughter's strength and go forward. As Karina thought, choosing Nivea as her partner was the best decision. As such, it's time to contact Raymond and use their contract. However, even though the princess agreed to cooperate with him, she was against Nivea dating the guy in person. Karina hoped that the woman would accept her as an intermediary. Although they would be strategic allies now, in the future it was necessary to take proper revenge. The girl visited Raymond to inform him of a case in which his help would be needed. The Magus laughed that even though they had signed the contract, he was not her servant, and besides, he had already regained his magical powers, so she should have taken her guard and left. Karina said that he was just scared. Suddenly, she would force him to do something strange, and the guy immediately began to deny it. The girl handed him several sheets of paper with information. Here, she structured everything he had to do. The princess undertook to cover all the costs associated with the study. Raymond was surprised by such an order because the girl could ask people from his family to do it. He was a magician and aimed at the place of the great master of the magic tower, so he was not eager to engage in any alchemy. As a child, he had been a brilliant alchemist, but one way or another, no matter how much he hated this science now, no matter how badly he treated his family, Karina didn't care because they had signed a contract and he couldn't disobey her. Raymond rubbed his neck at the place where the seal was and promised that she would find out what would happen as soon as the contract expired. Karina had already prepared the contract and he only had to sign it. All the materials for the study were prepared. The guy was only required to conduct research, as indicated in the papers. Raymond still signed the contract, although he believed that the girl was behaving arrogantly. By order of Karina, the guard had to stay with the mage for some time because he needed an eye and an eye. He could be up to something, not wait for the end of the contract or steal secret recipes. No one knew what was in the guy's head. Raymond was alarmed because he was uncomfortable with a stranger in the house, but the guard, comfortably seated in Raymond's chair, was very comfortable. The experiment was supposed to begin next week. The conversation was over, and Karina headed for the exit. While the girl was sorting through the papers in her chambers, Lily brought her tea. Recently, the princess has been working very hard and did not rest at all because of the opening of the boutique. Since she had successfully concluded the contract today, Lily offered her a good rest, but the girls still did not know how best to organize the space of the third floor of the boutique. Before the royal hunt began, it was necessary to control the construction of the building, check the addresses of the customers, oversee the development of the perfume, and develop the design of the packaging. Besides, Raymond had a lot of enemies, and according to the guards, every second wanted to kill him. Of course, Karina didn't really care about his fate, but there could be a leak of information about their recipes, so it was necessary to study who was hanging around the guy. The princess was right, but she worked so hard and was constantly busy that Lily was worried about her, so she asked her to rest and take a bath and she would give her a massage. Karina jumped up from her seat happily, because it was exactly what she needed. On the third floor, it was possible to open a spa with massages, for which the products of their brand would be used. Lily screamed in despair, because she was talking to the girl about rest, and she kept thinking about work. Apparently, being an entrepreneur was in Karina's blood. On the same day, the emperor drank tea in one of the halls of his palace. Unexpectedly, he wanted to meet Mrs. Pioneer instead of her daughter. The woman hinted that she did not have much free time. Astaire had heard that Lord Raymond had recently illegally entered the duchy, and he did not understand why the woman was so lenient towards him. Karina's mother frowned, not understanding what he was talking about. She did not spare her hair for the sake of her daughter, but it seems that everything was still fine with Raymond. The emperor knew that Raymond hated the princess and believed that Mrs. Pioneer was also aware, so she must have set a trap on him to suppress his magical powers. The woman clarified if he meant that thanks to this, she allows Raymond to threaten her daughter. Astaire wanted to say no, but he was worried about his lover too. Mrs. Pioneer thought His Majesty was dating her daughter for political reasons, so she was surprised that he was not alien to humanity. More than anything in her life, she regretted introducing her daughter to Raymond because she thought they were right for each other. They were not like other children. They behaved like adults, as if they were hiding something, while they were very similar in their unusual manner and inability to blend in with others. The woman was mistaken. Not only did she become a bad mother, but she also inflicted incurable spiritual wounds on her only daughter. In this case, the emperor did not understand why she had left Raymond as a candidate for the owner of the Magic Tower, since the magician had the right to dismiss candidates. Mrs. Pioneer said that it did not matter because Raymond would not become the owner of the Magic Tower in any case. About 10 years ago, she and Raymond had met in the old Carcel laboratory. The woman needed to pick up an order entrusted to this laboratory, and she accidentally stumbled upon the boy. Raymond looked too young to be one of the workers, so she wondered who he was. One of the employees told her that he was the son of the Carcel family. They said that he was a real talent in the field of alchemy, so he was placed here. The boy was very thin. It seemed that he was covered with scars and wounds from injections. Unfortunately, at that moment, Mrs. Pioneer could not talk to him. According to the charter of the laboratory, only other employees could contact the workers. Then, using her magical power, she sent a flower petal directly into the boy's hands from the second floor to the first floor. The woman thanked the employee for the order and hurried away. Then Raymond did not yet understand what had happened. At night, on the third floor of the research center in one of the test rooms, the boy was lying on his bed looking at a petal. The object shone and then filled the room with a bright pink light. At the same moment, Freya Pioneer, the same woman who had visited their laboratory in the afternoon, appeared in front of Raymond. She explained that she was just a mage passing by and asked what the name of the young alchemist genius was. The boy introduced himself as Carcel 3627. It looked more like a home address than a name. In any case, after their meeting, Freya decided to look at some of the documents of their laboratory. It turned out that they were conducting secret but very interesting experiments called Project Mage. Children who had little or no magic were injected with magical power illegally synthesized through alchemy, after which it began to regenerate in the body by itself, resulting in an artificially created magician. The result of the experiment is the death of all 11 test subjects, except for the boy, and despite the fact that he is the only one left, he is only half the success. No matter how much Carcel was stuffed with medicines, he still had too little magical power in him. The boy was 11 or 12 years old, about the same age as Freya's daughter. She didn't understand how a teenager could be so thin and handed him a bun to eat at least. The boy immediately pounced on the food. Apparently, he was not fed here at all. Freya didn't know how to tell him what she was going to say. Most likely, even before full puberty, Carcel would have died. Foolish alchemists may have studied with him, but for a woman, as for a talented magician, everything was obvious. It was not true that he had few magical powers. She channeled the boy's energy flow toward herself to gauge its amount. The problem was that he received a huge amount of magic, which he did not know how to control. If he had such a large amount of magic in him, at some point he, like his little comrades, would explode and die. Tears streamed down the boy's face, but Freya didn't want to scare him so much. She promised that she would tell him how to survive, but in return, Carcel should not tell anyone that she helped him. This secret will have to be kept for the rest of his life. From that day on, every night she had to teach him how to manipulate magic so that he could escape from the laboratory. After escaping, the boy had to go to the Association of Magicians and show a letter of recommendation. When he became a member of the association, it would be difficult for the alchemists to harm him. But on the other hand, he would also become an enemy of the Carcel family and would live as a wanderer. Carcel 3627 was even ready to give up his last name, but it was worth keeping it. In the future, if he had some power, that name would be useful when the truth was revealed. A name consisting of numbers could not be used in documents, so Freya racked her brains about what to call the boy. After going through different options, they finally agreed on Carcel Raimonda. So Raymond became part of the Mage Association, and even a candidate for the position of the next owner of the Magic Tower. In fact, the experiment of the Carcel family was only half successful. The first law of alchemy said that in order to get something, you need to give something of equal value. Raymond was born as an ordinary boy without magic, but now he had great magical power, became a candidate for the position of the owner of the Magic Tower, and all this thanks to the magic created by alchemy. In time, he would have to pay for it. Karina, led by the servants, came to the guy to hand over materials for research. Raymond was bleeding from his mouth. Thanks to the fact that Freya taught him how to use magic, he was lucky to survive and become an adult. But there was very little left until the moment of reckoning. At the threshold, the princess, who heard coughing, was met by a guard. Raymond was inside, but his health left much to be desired, so it was worth calling a doctor. At the same moment, the guy fell to the floor, frightening everyone. Karina sat at the head of the bed on which the mage was laid. She held her hand up to Raymond, and he immediately grabbed it, apparently thinking it was Tatia in front of him. In his sleep, he muttered that he would try and asked not to be abandoned. The girl asked the guard if something could have happened before she arrived, but there was nothing of the kind. At least in the morning, Raymond was fine, and then he suddenly began to cough up blood. In addition, the guy wanted to talk about something else. It was about the hired killers he mentioned last time. According to him, most of them were sent by the Carcel family, to which Raymond himself belonged. Karina wondered what it was necessary to do so that your own family tried to kill you, and immediately waking up, the magician proclaimed that it was her business. Raymond couldn't understand why he passed out, since he had never had any health problems, so he continued to pretend that he was the strongest and justified fainting by saying that he was just a little tired. In that case, Karina asked if he wanted to let go of her hand, and he immediately pulled her away. It seemed that his condition had returned to normal, so she was about to leave. The doctor was coming soon, and the girl asked Raymond to be treated until he fully recovered. Originally, she wanted to give him some materials related to alchemy, so she left everything on the table for him to get to work as soon as he recovered, but today the guy could heal and rest. Raymond was surprised that he could rest, although of course he would not be able to work properly because of his condition. Karina handed him a bottle of aromatic oil, which helped with fatigue. Lily had made it herself, so it was a pity to give it away, although it would be sad if the guy died before he finished his work. The girl headed for the exit, and Raymond began to make such noises as if he was going to say thank you. Although of course it was beyond his capabilities, so the guy told her not to expect gratitude from him. Karina advised him to take the oil as just a gift, start researching and stay on schedule. Since Raymond considered himself a genius magician, he promised that he would make cosmetics even better than they deserved. When the girl finally came out, a blush spread across his face. The guy could not believe that he appeared in front of the princess in such a wretched state. In her chambers, Tatia looked at the ring Raymond had given her. It seems that the product was intended for men because it was too large. That time, Ray told her that he would help, but then he disappeared, so the girl was sure, having given her the ring, he was just trying to get rid of her in this way, and that's it. Tatia had a headache again. Lately, as soon as she thought about something serious, a migraine immediately rolled in. Andrew decided to enter the room at the wrong time. The girl imperceptibly threw the magic ring back to the rest of the jewelry. The husband was going to the palace because the imperial hunting season was about to begin. Karina was also supposed to be present because the hunt was one of the official events. Besides, it was the first imperial hunt since Emperor Astaire ascended the throne. It would be strange to be in a romantic relationship with the emperor and not attend such an event. In that case, Tatia also volunteered to go. Andrew asked his wife to explain what was on her mind, and the girl reminded him of her promise to make him emperor. She asked him to trust her and promised that she would return everything he had lost. Raymond was reading a letter sent by Karina telling him to fulfill his promise on the emperor's hunt. Looking at the bottle of oil, he apologized to someone to himself because he had already made up his mind. In the guest room of the Duke's estate, Tatia and Wilhelm discussed how things were going with the boutique. The guy did exactly as she said, so there was no end to the buyers, and the perfume named after her was almost completely sold out a day after the sale began. The heir to the Carcel family, Ethan, also contributed to their success, spreading the rumor that Tatia constantly used this fragrance, so everyone rushed to buy them. At this rate, everyone would soon forget about Karen's perfume, about which there is only a lot of talk, but it was impossible to buy it. 873. Like a joyful puppy, Wilhelm asserted that his beloved was not only beautiful, but also talented, and the word perfection was invented especially for her. She had heard from the lady's acquaintances that a pre-order for a limited collection of Karina's fragrance was open, so Tatia wondered if there was any news regarding the opening of a perfume boutique. Wilhelm knew from the association that Karina was planning to postpone the opening to a later date, so the guy believed that she was scared and ran away with her tail between her legs. Tati, on the contrary, thought that her ex-friend had come up with another nefarious plan. The lover supported the girl, saying that unlike her, honest and sincere, there was always something vile and mean in the princess. Titi got up from her seat, walking away, but Wilhelm stopped her, suggesting that she go check on their boutique with him. He was clearly overestimating himself, and the girl said that she and Andy had business today. This time, the Archduke appeared more than ever. He was worried about why the knight was not in training. Tatia put her hand on the shoulder of the guy, whose face was already dripping with a drop of sweat from overexertion, replied that they were solving issues related to the boutique, but now the ward was free. When Will ran out, slamming the door, Andrew noticed that he was looking at his wife with the eyes of a faithful puppy, as if she were his owner, and not him. The Archduke went outside before it got dark, and Tatia grabbed his arm, trying to stop him. The guy pulled his hand away, accidentally pushing the girl to the floor. 885. He asked her to refrain from unnecessary touching, and Tatia apologized. It's okay, she had to have another chance. In the third block on the very shopping street, the Archduke and Archduchess were strolling to the joyful comments of passers-by. At some point, the girl heard someone suggest that all this was just a show, because according to rumors, everything was not so smooth for them. She looked around, but there was no one around. To Tatia's surprise, her husband took her hand and offered her another walk. He believed that the more people saw them together, the better their opinion of them would be. In this way, they would also attract more attention to themselves, which was also to their advantage. The reactions of passers-by were not long in coming. Two girls immediately ran up to the couple. The last time they had seen the Duke was at a masquerade ball, and they wondered what he was doing there. Tatia explained that her husband was usually busy performing his duties at the palace, so it was only today that they had time and decided to arrange a date. The girls squealed with joy, but regretted that the center of the street was blocked on such a wonderful day. Some aristocrat paid a huge sum to all the boutiques in the first quarter and rented that part of the street for a day. They said that he organized all this for his beloved, such boundless love. Now the girls decided to find out when the couple plans to have children. They believed that if such a beautiful couple had a son, it would be just wonderful. The emperor still hadn't married, and if they had a successor, he would become the crown prince. Tatia wrapped her arms around her husband's shoulders, telling the girls that for now they would like to spend more time exclusively in each other's company. Andrew laughed as if he was embarrassed in public, but that was too much. Children were of no use because the guy himself was going to take the place of the emperor as soon as he killed Astaire. After that, he planned to divorce and return to her, Karina, who at that moment approached the couple. Tatia was not at all happy to meet him, and Andrew was a little embarrassed, not suspecting what the princess was doing here. It was even funny that being the same family with the emperor, they didn't know that today in the first quarter, she was meeting with His Majesty. With difficulty, Tatia, who had been holding on until that moment, shouted that it was a lie. Spilling out her emotions, the girl finally realized that she had made a mistake. Titi couldn't afford to have Karina ball with a man she couldn't get her hands on. The likes of her simply couldn't date the emperor. Andrew found a way out of the situation, saying that the Duchess and the princess were old friends. Besides, now Tatia was part of the imperial family. And at the same time, the Duchess did not know about her meeting with His Majesty, which must have hurt the girl greatly. Titi confirmed how glad she was that her friend, with whom she was inseparable, was meeting with the Emperor. But for a moment she thought that this was a lie, so she felt a little uncomfortable, so she accidentally broke out. Of course, it was funny for Karina to watch this performance. She was not obliged to report anything about her relationship. Besides, she was already late for the meeting, so she was in a hurry to leave her acquaintances. The girl took a couple of steps forward, and Titi, stopping her ex-friend, asked her to go with her. She and the Emperor were one family, but lately His Majesty had been so busy that they had not been able to see each other at all, for the Duchess would have liked to meet him and greet him. Despite the fact that Karina was stressed by the situation, she still replied that the girl could do as she wished. As they walked down the street together, Titi looked at the princess. Her appearance attracted attention, but even so, she was still boring and cold on her own mind. The girl did not understand why the Emperor continued to date such a simpleton, because no matter how you looked at it, she was better than her. Andrew, who had already learned his wife's reactions, understood that she was now thinking about something mean. Finally, the trio approached the Emperor, and Karina greeted him by touching his hand. Of course, the guy was not so happy with the rest of the arrivals. After bowing, they also greeted His Majesty. Deciding not to interfere with the couple's date, Astaire said goodbye to them, but Titi stopped him. Rubbing the bead, the girl began to tell that since childhood, she and the princess studied at the academy and were close friends, between whom there were no secrets, but from the beginning of their relationship, many secrets appeared between them. As she began to cry, Tatia continued that if they hadn't accidentally crossed paths, she wouldn't have known about their relationship, so she felt as if His Majesty was taking her friend away from her. The Emperor, who thought that this was a great opportunity for her to become more independent, was good-natured but unshakable. As adults, it would be abnormal to know every step of his friend. The girl hesitated slightly, but immediately, grabbing Astaire's sleeve, invited them all to meet together and have lunch. First of all, it was necessary to establish contact with the Emperor. Karina's presence was extremely unpleasant, but this way the Emperor would be able to see the difference between them and understand that the Duchess was better than this girl. Tatia added that harmony in the family is very important. When the Emperor understands this postulate, his choice will fall on her, and he will not even notice the sudden disappearance of Karina. If both Andrew and Astaire were infatuated with her, she didn't even know which of them to make Emperor. The space around was filled with Astaire's loud laughter. Harmony in the family was an incredibly funny concept for him in these realities. Andrew immediately began to apologize, but there was nothing to apologize for. They amused him so much that there was nothing to reproach himself for. Before interfering in the relationship of her childhood friend, Tatia should have paid more attention to her own family. If the Duke had told his wife a little more about their childhood, she would not have thought of such words. For example, if the story of what exactly the deceased father did to the Emperor, or about the second prince who died as a result of high treason. It was also possible to tell about the day popularly known as the Prince's Rebellion. Andrew said that he would enlighten the Duchess on this matter, and they finally said goodbye. The Emperor apologized for keeping the princess waiting so long. They exchanged only a few words, but it was already very clear to him that Tatia was a disgusting woman. Although Astaire sincerely did not understand how men were led by her hypocrisy, Karina was grateful that he did not take her side. It would have been in Tatia's spirit to wear the bracelet on the Emperor as well, but for some reason he was still indifferent to her. Andrew was amused that the girl had asked him to confide in him, but that was all she could show him, even with the bracelet. She claimed that what happened was something like training, but she herself began to bite her finger. This has not happened so far. A game window popped up in front of Astaire, indicating that this object could not be conquered by her. The Emperor had indeed rented the entire first block of Vera Street, and he needed to see the hunting suit that had been sewn, but there were usually a lot of people here, and he decided that it could be dangerous. Karina understood that renting an entire block was not an easy task, especially since he probably had to hide his identity. It would be much more convenient to send the costume directly to the palace. Of course, she was right, but Astaire wanted to go on a date with her, because after the masquerade ball, they could see each other for a long time. The guy decided that perhaps his attention was tiring her because the girl was busy without it, but Karina herself was glad to have the opportunity to take a break from a bunch of things and worries. Aster was not himself, as if he was offended by the princess for something. How nice it would be to get into his head now to understand what he was thinking. The couple found themselves at the door of an atelier called the Damas Boutique. The man who greeted them inside was kneeling and elbowing on the floor, diligently serving the guests. He assumed that in front of him were noble aristocrats, because a kilometer away from them there was a whiff of money. It remained to promote the guests for large sums, leaving without a single penny. For each of them, 10 samples of costumes had already been prepared, corresponding to the measurements taken, so the couple only had to choose. Aster was surprised, because the princess did not need a suit for hunting. At the ball, she agreed that she would accept the game he caught. The girl did not have time to report that she also wanted to participate and sent her measurements to the atelier. She really often managed to surprise the emperor. In fact, Karina planned to meet Allison on a hunt, but she couldn't tell the guy about it. Otherwise, he would immediately start dissuading her, so she preferred to laugh awkwardly, pretending that she wasn't up to anything. It could not last long, so the girl began to send help signals to the employee, imperceptibly winking at him. Aster tried to ask her something, and the representative of the atelier immediately began to insist that the suits for trying on were ready, so the conversation had to be postponed after all. Before the emperor returned, some explanation had to be invented. From His Majesty's point of view, it might seem that the girl was actually hiding a lot of things, but she was not used to asking for help from others or trusting them. During the fire, she acted on her own, although without Andrew's help, her end would have been near. Karina did not tell him about working with Raymond on a perfume boutique. She also kept silent about plans regarding the opening of the hospital. His Majesty always just gave her a helping hand without question. In fact, the fact that she had brought Andrew and Tatia with her today was also a surprise to him. If you look at it this way, it might really seem that she is a heartless lover. By this time, Aster had already changed his clothes and appeared in front of the girl so that she could evaluate how the costume looked on him. Karina paid him a sincere compliment, and the emperor was glad that she liked it. Now it remained to try on the other 9 suits. Of course, the princess would like to see, but by the time he tried everything on, the sun would have already set. The only solution in this situation was to buy all the costumes and later send a person to pick them up. Karina informed Aster that they hadn't been on a date for a long time, and she would like to take a walk with him and talk. In the street, the girl shouted joyfully at the top of her lungs. She always wanted to do this at least once, to shout in the very center of the city. The couple had not been able to walk quietly for so long without looking back at others, and now it was all thanks to the emperor. However, he believed that this was due to the fact that the princess took time out of her busy schedule. From that moment on, the girl wanted to be more honest with him. She took Aster's hand, and if he didn't mind, offered to tell a story from her past, which happened during her 3rd year at the academy. Then he and Tatia agreed to do a graduation work together, but a friend only now warned that she was in a different team. If she had said this earlier, Karina could have already found another team, because failure to complete group work threatened to graduate only in a year. Titi asked me to understand her too. Danielle has been on the team with her since last year, and Raymond said that he refused to work without her, but unfortunately the 4 of them could not do the task. Then Daniel offered to leave the team and work together with Karina, but she refused, deciding to cope on her own. To be honest, the situation was familiar to her. For 3 years at the academy, she was constantly alone. She herself was well aware that she was too trusting, but for some reason, even knowing this, she always remained a fool. Then, after Karina's confrontation with Andrew, the professor called them to discuss their graduation thesis. For the release, it was necessary to have a group project, and only their names were not in the list of groups. They could have teamed up, and the man would have put them on the list, and Andrew was delighted with the offer. However, Karina insisted that she wanted to do the project alone. She didn't care if her grade was lowered, the main thing was to keep the opportunity to graduate. Realizing that the new Andrew was hesitant about whether he wanted to do the project alone, the professor gave the students until the following week to discuss the matter among themselves. He added that it will be much more convenient for Karina to complete the project herself in tandem with someone than alone, and a decrease in the grade can be avoided, and then say goodbye to the guys until the next lesson. Andrew asked if the princess would still like to do the project together. He had only recently transferred and had not yet had time to make friends. Judging by the fact that Andrew Lavron transferred so late, the reason was a rather unpleasant story. In any case, it would not be easy if he tried to get closer to the girl. Bad rumors would appear. Karina repeated that she would do the graduation project on her own, so the guy should look for another team, and walked away without even giving him a chance to answer. He was immediately surrounded by other students who believed that Karina had always been known for her lack of manners, and talking to her only spoiled the mood. They argued that he should join them instead of wasting his energy on the girl, although it was even fortunate on Karina's part. Every time she appeared among the students, it was a new reason for discussion. Everyone was talking behind her back, not even knowing anything about her. They said that the reason was her low self-esteem. They called her rude. But if she really had such a terrible character, she wouldn't just endure insults. Of course, at one time the gossip hurt her greatly, but now she didn't care. In any case, it was only a game where everything was created for the main characters, a fake world. Tears would not help, and there was no point in crying and getting angry. So finally, left alone among the trees, Karina just took a bite of her sandwich. Let her beloved leave her, let her friends turn away, let them accuse her of what she is not guilty of. She does not care. As she was devouring her lunch, she heard someone approaching her. It was Andrew, who thought there was no one around. The girl said that she was almost finished, so he could stay. Noticing that her sandwich was barely bitten, the newcomer hurried to leave, but still decided to offer to eat together. No one could see them here anyway, so the girl didn't care. The silence in which they ate was very awkward, so Karina decided to find out how Andrew was doing with the graduation project team. Despite the princess thinking that he had joined Sophie and Ruby, the boy still did not find anyone, and refused to participate in the team with the girls. He did not want to deal with those who slandered another person without knowing anything about him, and this slightly embarrassed Karina. He also revealed to her that stickers were placed in sandwiches under the packaging, and after that day, the girl began to have lunch with Andrew. Little by little, they began to spend more time together, and even though his family's status was much lower, she didn't care at all. In fact, the low social position meant that he would not be among the main characters. In this regard, the current situation was more than satisfactory to Karina. Andrew was comfortable even when they were just silent, but they could talk about absolutely any topic. In the most difficult moments, only he was on the side of the girl, only next to him she was not the friend of the main character, but herself. Autumn came. There was one semester left until graduation, but thanks to Andrew, the last year at the academy was filled with pleasant memories. People discussed Karina's relationship with him and his social status, but the girl did not care about hatred or insults in her direction. It wasn't that she wasn't worried at all, she just endured, but it hurt that Andrew was also being humiliated because of her. At the moment when the girl shouted at the gossips, a man turned to her. In his hands was a letter sent from the duchy of the Pioneer family. Running her eyes over the text, Karina was horrified. Trouble came from where it was not expected. Andrew, happy to meet his beloved, immediately changed his face when he saw that she was crying. The letter said that her mother had disappeared. This happened a year and a half after the divorce of her parents. After the dissolution of the marriage, my mother did not have a permanent place of residence. She repeatedly moved from place to place because of her research, and during one of them, she disappeared without a trace in the mountains. Now Karina could remember that period calmly, knowing about her safe return, but then it seemed to her that her world was collapsing. She was afraid that her mother would not return. It's scary that loved ones will leave like this one after another, and in the end, she will be left all alone. Karina did not understand why everyone left her. Perhaps she simply shouldn't have come into this world, and Andrew had no idea how she could say such a thing. Sometimes the girl imagined a world in which she is the main character, where she has real friends next to her, a man who sincerely loves. No one looks down on her but appreciates her by her actions. A world in which unexpected tragedies do not occur, where every day she is happy and loved. This is the life of the main character. At that moment, Andrew came up behind the girl and hugged her, tears streaming down his cheeks. He promised that he would make her world like this, that he would always be there, that he would never change, and that he would love her forever. As tender as Andrew's confession sounded then, but anxiety was growing just as strong in Karina's soul, because she did not know if she could trust him. She wanted him to get along with the other guys, but she wanted to be close herself. She was eager to believe him and loved him, but she was afraid that he would also leave her. But there was no use in these thoughts. Anyway, Karina, being a secondary character, could not do anything. It was better not to think about anything then. One weekday, they were met by Tatia. The girl suggested that she go to a new cafe with her and Daniel, but Karina had other plans. Titi understood that her plans were Andrew, so she simply said goodbye, deciding that there was nothing she could do. Insults from others were heard in the direction of the guy. The students considered him an Alphonse and did not understand why they were together. It seemed to Karina that Tatia was staring at Andrew too intently, as if she was plotting to take her boyfriend away from her again. The original didn't even have his character, so everything had to be fine. Andrew is far from the main character, so it would be enough if they didn't cross paths again. When the guy began to get into the conflict, Karina said that it would not help. You can't silence everyone. In any case, the rumors were just rumors. It was enough that they knew the truth themselves. Andrew only wanted to ask them to stop saying such things, and the girl said that the intervention of just a guy from the Viscount's family would not solve anything, since her words, "the princess," were not enough. If it were something easy that he could solve with words, everything would be different. He could continue to pretend that he was the main character, but in fact, they were both extras. She, without understanding why, continued to say what hurt the guy, although she did not think so at all. If he wasn't just a guy from a Viscount family, but a crown prince, perhaps everything would be different. From that day on, Andrew began to spend a lot of time alone. After a while, he said that he actually liked Tati. The one who promised never to leave her ended up leaving her alone. Then Karina realized that eternal love does not exist. Therefore, she generally stopped believing in such a thing as love. The girl believed that His Majesty offered her to date not because of love, but because of political ambitions, but he was always kind to her and supported, so she wanted to repay him for this. Of course, it would be difficult for her to tell him everything now, but she was almost able to carry out Tatia's revenge plan. Karina took Esther's hand, giving permission to use her too, building an honest and mutually beneficial relationship. Being overwhelmed with determination, she proposed to the guy to get married. He already had the greatest military and political power in the empire, but due to the terrors at the beginning of his journey, he had a rather low approval rating among the citizens. Based on this, the guy needed the support of the aristocracy. To solve this problem, he could influence secular society through the position of Karina's family. Therefore, Karina was ready to give a positive answer to the offer made to her on the day of their first meeting. However, the emperor's face did not express complete delight. Upset, he let go of his hand from the girl's hands. Esther didn't know if she really thought they had met for the first time that day. This phrase became a mystery to Karina, but the guy was not going to explain its meaning. Come to think of it, hearing such a proposal on the first day of the meeting was unusual, and Karina was really shocked by his words. Of course, this came as a surprise to her, especially since she was drunk and behaved indecently that day. But he still helped her. Apparently, then the girl really went too far with alcohol and was not herself. Esther really thought the princess was a very good, intelligent, and interesting woman. However, he still refused the offer to get engaged. Karina wondered why this was so, because it was his proposal. Esther explained that they didn't know each other well yet, so there was no need to rush, but then they could decide. At this point, their conversation ended, and the girl did not know what else to say to him. Going on a royal hunt in a carriage with the emperor, she thought about the conversation that had taken place. Since he proposed marriage to her, her social position had not changed. Now Karina was not sure that initially his initiative was dictated by political motives. Perhaps the recent meeting with Tatia still affected Esther, and he was the same as all men. Finally, the silence was broken by the guy himself. Having handed the princess a gift box, he hoped that she would come to the hunting festival with her. Inside was an incredibly beautiful brooch in the form of a butterfly. Because of the awkwardness, Karina was afraid to even look Esther in the eye, but since he gave her a gift, perhaps everything was fine. The girl still did not understand what he was thinking, for God's sake. With such mixed feelings, the day of the hunting festival came. Lily couldn't wait for the event anymore. They said that the imperial forest was unimaginably beautiful, but Karina had already been there once, a long time ago. Except for a hunting festival, it was almost impossible to get there, but thanks to the princess, the maid was finally able to see the forest with her own eyes. As a result, although Karina did not want to become like Tatiana, she still put on a bracelet to see the future of the main characters. The girl decided that she would find out how interesting Estera was and immediately shoot him. Lily wondered if there was anything that worried the lady. Since the day of their meeting with His Majesty, she had not been herself. Karina pretended that everything was fine. The opening of their boutique was coming soon, the weather was good, and the day of the hunting festival was approaching. It couldn't have been better. She asked the girl not to worry about her. Although the princess did not know why Astaire had turned her down that day, she had other important matters to deal with. Finally, the girls found themselves at the gathering place, at the entrance to the imperial forest. Soon, His Imperial Majesty was to begin the opening, and everyone was expected to begin. Under shouts, the emperor went out to the people to proclaim the beginning of the hunt. Seeing what jewelry he was wearing, Karina was a little taken aback. Astaire wore the exact same brooch that he had given her. The moment their eyes crossed, the girl understood the meaning of this brooch. Lily claimed that it was a sign, a symbol of their love and developing relationship, a kind of announcement. He demonstrated to everyone that they were together. The emperor was sincerely glad to be presented to him with everyone else in this legendary territory. This land, called the Golden Forest according to legends, is the birthplace of the creator god of their world. This forest is a unique area where it is impossible to use magic, since the purest magic stones located here suck magical powers out of a person. Therefore, everyone will be able to demonstrate their real skills, which is the meaning of the imperial hunt. After today's celebration in honor of the opening of the festival, the competition was to begin. The first day for the gentlemen, the second day for the ladies, and on the third day, a feast was planned. The emperor hoped that everything would go well and wished the participants good results. While Lily was carrying the suitcases to their tent, Karina decided to look for where the doctor's tent was located. She had one important matter that needed to be solved during this festival, namely to meet Allison, Tatia's doctor, and lure her to his side. On the flag nearby was the coat of arms of the Archduke. Of course, such a noble family could not miss the imperial hunt. After the wedding, Andrew and Tatia provided the staff of their estate for every official event of the empire, as if they wanted to contain the growing power of the emperor, so it was easy to assume that they would provide medical personnel at the hunting festival as well. In search of the infirmary, Karina pretended not to feel well in order to get help from a female doctor. So far, only the Duchess's attending physician, Lady Allison, was present here, so the assistant offered the girl painkillers, although she counted on the doctor's consultation. It was impossible to get her advice now, unless of course she needed urgent help, but a male doctor could examine the participant. As Karina thought, it was not easy to meet Allison. At the very least, she found out that the woman was definitely here, and in order to meet her and not seem intrusive, it turned out that she would have to get injured in front of everyone during the competition. Raymond soon showed up at the festival, looking a little tired. Thanks to Karina, he didn't have a spare moment due to her assignment to finish the product development before the Emperor's hunt. Judging by how vigorously he waved his arms, there was no need to worry about his health. In any case, yesterday the girl had tested all the developed products, and now he only had to fulfill the last promise. During the imperial hunt, present Karina with prey. Of course, Raymond remembered this. Once the hunt was over, this absurd contract would also come to an end. Although Karina was not sure that with his mediocre abilities he would be able to catch at least someone, the guy would have to try since he was waiting so long for the end of the agreement. At this point, Raymond finally boiled over and shouted that he really hated the girl. In the tent of the medical staff, Allison clarified whether Tatia was sure that she wanted to participate in the event, given that she had often complained of headaches lately. The Archduke had been waiting for this event for a long time, so she didn't want to make it up just because of her headache. Allison asked the Duchess to speak immediately. If she felt bad, the woman would be ready at any time. As soon as Titi came out of the tent, Wilhelm was already there and asked about her well-being. As soon as she was done with business, he immediately ran here, because he was frightened when he found out that she missed the opening ceremony and was here. The girl was absolutely not delighted with such a meeting, and hoped that the guy came with Andrew. The Archduke said that he still had things to do, so he would join a little later. He believed that Wilhelm was looking forward to the Emperor's hunt so much that he was like a child whose parents had promised to take him on a picnic, as if he wanted to leave the post of Master of the Order of Chivalry and become the commander of the toy soldiers. Now the guy noticed that something was wrong with Titi. Nearby, she noticed Raymond standing next to Karina, who clearly did not expect to see his beloved at the event. She grabbed his arm, telling him that they needed to talk. The young men went into the Archduke's tent, and Vil, annoyed by the appearance of the new object of Tatia's attention, tried to make out what they were doing inside. The girl was not sure that she would be able to use the ring given to her by Raymond because it was said that magic did not work in the Golden Forest. It was true that the Golden Forest sucked magical powers from a person, but it could not block the functions of artifacts made from magic stones. In that case, killing Karina with the ring would be the perfect crime. Hearing such words from Tati, Raymond asked her to return the ring to him. He suggested to her that he would do it himself, because it is dangerous for a girl to do such a thing on her own. Titi didn't know if Ray was making a fool of her too. He promised to help, and then disappeared, did not let her in on his plans, and now he wanted to take the ring he had given her. Raymond yelled that he was doing his best just for her, and he initially contacted Karina to get closer to her. Seeing the level of sympathy of the guy, Tatia assumed that the problem was in his feelings, which faded away so easily as soon as they were separated for a while. Holding on to the bracelet, the girl shed tears, declaring that he also left her in the end. Raymond swore that he was always sincere with her, and for the sake of her happiness, he would agree to anything, and his level of sympathy immediately began to rise. In this case, Tatia asked him to help because she could find happiness only when Karina disappeared. The guy took her hands. After the day he first saw Titi's tears, she was the natural mistress of his heart. However, he could not allow this, so begging her to forgive him, he snatched the ring. Men gathered at the place of departure for hunting at the entrance to the Golden Forest. Among them, Karina could not find Aster, although she tried because she wanted to talk. Yesterday, for some reason, she was surrounded by a crowd of people, and she could not even communicate with him normally. Before, at all events, people only avoided her, which means that the power of the original plot could weaken. Finally, the couple's eyes crossed, and Aster wondered why the princess was there so early. Yesterday, she had not been able to greet him properly, so she decided to meet for a minute before the start of the men's competition. Of course, it was nothing compared to the brooch he had given him, but the girl grew the flower with the help of magic and handed it to Aster, casting a conservation spell so that it would not wither. The girl was worried that the gift was not very good because she had little magical power, and the ability to magic was not great, but it was enough. The emperor was really happy. Karina had achieved an excellent result. This flower was perfect. Flushing, she noticed that the guy had put on a paired brooch today. Aster forgot to tell. When they both wear brooches, he immediately knows if anything has happened to the girl, so if she gets into a dangerous situation, he will always come to her aid. Thanks to this, Karina could not worry about anything and just enjoy the festival. Last night, Raymond had taken the ring off Tatia and thrown it away. The girl, not ready to give her own to anyone, immediately ran for the jewelry and almost caught it. At that moment, she found herself at the feet of her husband, Andrew Lovren Gloucester. He did not know how to understand that his wife ran after the ring given to him by another man like a dog. Tatia made excuses that she was very greedy. Raymond gave her a ring and then he took it away himself, so she got angry. Then Andrew said that instead of this trinket, he would buy her hundreds of others with larger diamonds, and this one he would step on and break. The girl yelled for him to stop, covering the product with his hands. For the Archduke, this was no longer a novelty, so he could not even be angry. He was only surprised how much his wife treasured the ring given to him by another man. She could really hurt feelings that he did not even have for her. If she planned to behave so vulgarly in the future, it would be better for them to divorce. Unable to withstand such pressure, Tatia admitted that it was an artifact, 1165, that this is not an ordinary ring, but the last precious thing with a magic stone. With it, even in the Golden Forest, it was possible to use mind-altering magic. Tatia still had to say that she was going to get rid of Karina with the help of the ring. Then, having learned about the magical properties of the jewelry, Andrew confiscated it from his wife. Before hunting, he put it on without a single drop of doubt. Perhaps his dream should have come true sooner than he thought. The royal hunt began, and the men rushed forward to test their abilities. Andrew killed the prey first. His Majesty was only a fraction of a second late. A moment later, the bullet flew near the ear of the Archgetzog. This time he hesitated, and the prey was the Emperor's. It was already dark in the area. Having shot a decent number of different creatures, they walked together in the same direction. The boys stopped at a cliff, and Aster noted that he was experiencing something strange today. He didn't know if it was something new or familiar, but as soon as they met, Andrew's face seemed to twist with fear. However, today he looked at the Emperor in the same way as the deceased second prince who wanted to take his place. A stare pointed the gun at the Archduke's head, but the Archduke did not move. Activating the ring, Andrew said that this place had never belonged to his brother. If my father hadn't been killed then, he wouldn't have been able to get the throne. The Emperor was not sure whether he was aware of the responsibility for his words, and the Duke immediately corrected himself. If Astor had not killed his father then, he would have inherited the throne, and his brother would have knelt before him. The guy immediately fell to his knees, dropping the gun from his hands. He could not control his body as if it were stone or someone else's. Everything was floating around, and the Emperor guessed that Andrew had used a mind-altering artifact. The Duke was glad that he had finally shown his true nature, the face of a murderer. The death of his mother was not enough for him. As soon as he was born, he took away the lives of his father and brothers. The blood